Chapter 2079. She's really a natural actress. The dignified and reserved young lady was naturally the eldest daughter of the Xue family, Xue Baochai. Noticing her elegant demeanor, Song Qingshu secretly made a comparison in his heart. Such acting skills were enough to make those popular young actresses cry out in the future. Second brother. At this moment, a delicate female voice came from the side. Only now did Song Qingshu notice that there was a delicate young lady next to him. Her eyebrows were faintly covered with a faint layer of worry, but she did not reveal the slightest bitterness. Instead, she appeared even more delicate and pitiful. Sister Lin. Song Qingshu naturally recognized her. When he was appointed Prince of Qi, all the civil and military officials of the court came to congratulate him. At that time, Lin Rahai, who was still the Salt Imperial Censor, brought her along. At that time, apart from her delicate, willow-like temperament, which left a deep impression on him, her lack of vigor was also particularly eye-catching. At that time, Song Qingshu noticed that she had a congenital deficiency. It would be difficult for her to live to the age of 30. If she experienced great sorrow and joy midway through, she might not even live to the age of 20. Unfortunately, there was nothing he could do at that time. However, now that he had obtained the rootless tree secret art from Zhang Sanfeng, it could extend his lifespan to a certain extent. Previously, Ying Ying's complexion had become much rosier after practicing it, so he had to find a chance to teach it to her. He couldn't just sit back and watch her die. Noticing that he had been staring at her, Lin Daiyu's white, jade-like cheeks blushed slightly. Somewhat at a loss, she lowered her head. "Don't frighten Daiyu." The Jia matriarch glared at Song Qingshu. Lin Daiyu was her biological granddaughter. She could not help but feel especially sorry for her. Song Qingshu recovered his senses. He imitated Jia Baiyu's tone and praised the young ladies. The last time he entered the Jia residence, whether it was Lin Daiyu, Xue Baochai, or Shi Shangyun, these ladies had not yet entered the Jia residence. He presumed that they had entered later. Although these girls all had their own families, regardless of whether it was Shi Shangyun or Lin Daiyu, their mothers had passed away. There were many men in the residence, and it was not convenient for their fathers to raise them. Therefore, they were sent to the Jia residence, where there were many women, to grow up together with their peers. After all, several families had intermarried for generations, and the Jia residence was also their relatives. As for Xue Baochai, although her mother was still alive, Xue Ji, that old fox, would not let go of such an opportunity to improve the relationship between the families, so he also sent her over. "Don't just stand there. Quickly take a seat. Quickly take a seat." Mrs. Jia was in high spirits. Obviously, she was very happy that Jia Baoyu had returned. Everyone sat down in order. Originally, according to the general rules of the Jia residence, men and women would not eat in the same room. They were not even allowed to talk during the meal. However, with so many things happening in the Jia residence, no one was in the mood to delve into this. Lady Jia sighed with emotion. During this period of time, there's been one bad news after another in the mansion. Fortunately, Baoyu has returned. Wang Shifeng, who was standing to the side, took the opportunity to raise her glass and said with a smile, "Let us celebrate Baoyu's safe return." Lady Jia beamed with joy. "We should celebrate. We should celebrate." Jia Baoyu had always been the center of attention in the Jia residence. Now that the old mistress had spoken, no one dared to offend her. Although some people were dissatisfied with Jia Baoyu's sudden return, they pretended to be very happy on the surface. After a round of drinking, Lady Jia pulled Jia Zhen and Jia Lian aside and said, "Brother Zhen, Brother Lian, now that the Ning and Rong residences have been plagued by disasters, you are the only pillars left. Baoyu has always been immature, so from now on, you and your brother should help him out. Brother Bao is naturally intelligent, so he must be able to learn quickly." The two of them replied with a smile. Lady Jian nodded with satisfaction, then pulled Song Qingshu aside and said, "Baoyu, I know that you have never liked scholarly honors in the future, but now that your father is gone and the Jia residence is experiencing an unprecedented catastrophe, you should change." Ask your two brothers for advice on a daily basis, and study your homework when you have time. The Great Song Dynasty emphasizes literature and restrains martial arts. If you can pass the imperial examinations, the Jia residents will be able to rise again. Song Qing-shu made a vague sound of agreement, but Lady Jia was very pleased. In the past, when Jia Baoyu heard about scholarly honors and a future, he would immediately cover his ears and shake his head while shouting, "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it." It seemed that his experiences during this period of time had indeed matured him. During the banquet, many people inquired about Song Qing-shu's well-being and from time to time asked him about what had happened during his disappearance. Now that Song Qing-shu had such a rich experience, he casually took a paragraph and adapted it to deal with it. Lady Jia's body became tired halfway through the banquet, and she quickly returned to her room to rest with the help of her servant girls. The others naturally did not want to stay in the courtyard too late, and after a while, they dispersed. Taoist priest, please wait a moment. Song Qing-shu had been waiting for an opportunity, and he quickly caught up with Li Macho. Li Macho turned around and looked at him coldly. What's the matter? Song Qing-shu opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. He really wanted to ask her why she had appeared in the Jia residence, especially with the identity of Miaoyu. But now his identity had to be kept secret. If one more person knew, the whole plan would collapse, especially since she was Li Wan's elder sister, and Li Wan was the daughter-in-law of the Jia family. Seeing that he did not say anything and only stared at her in a daze, Li Macho's eyes narrowed, and a dangerous light flashed in her eyes. Li Wan, who was beside her, saw that the situation was not right, and hurriedly pulled her away. Then, she turned her head and said to Song Qing-shu, Miaoyu is a person who does not belong to the secular world. Baoyu, don't mess around with her. Song Qing-shu smiled embarrassedly, thinking that in the past, Jia Baoyu's habit of pestering beautiful girls was well known, and Li Wan only thought that his old habit was acting up again. Now that there were so many people, it was naturally not convenient to look for her. As Song Qing-shu walked towards the Yihong courtyard, he secretly wondered if he should look for her later. Why are you leaving so soon after the banquet ended? I feel that you have become a lot more distant after coming back this time. A gentle voice sounded. Without turning his head, he knew that it was Shui Baochai. Song Qing-shu was secretly shocked. Could it be that the Shui Baochai of this world had an affair with Jia Baoyu? But when he came to the Jia's mansion last time, she clearly didn't come to the Jia's mansion, and then Baoyu disappeared. Logically speaking, they should not have met each other. However, he immediately realized that the relationship between these big families was so close, and they were all in Lin City. Their mansions were not far away from each other, so it was very convenient for them to visit each other. To some extent, it could be said that they were childhood sweethearts who grew up together. Thinking this through, Song Qing-shu then answered, It's just that this time when I came back, things are still the same, but people have changed, so I inevitably feel a little depressed. Shui Baochai blinked her eyes and looked at him carefully. This time, you have indeed changed a lot. Anyone will change after going through so many things. Song Qing-shu wasn't worried. With the big events of being captured and Jia Shidao's death, he was a little different from before, so it wasn't a big deal. My condolences. Shui Baochai worked in the Imperial City Department and was also the eldest daughter of the Shui family. Naturally, she knew how Jia Shidao died, but she didn't show it at all. If you need any help in the future, you can come to me. Thank you, Sister Bao. Song Qing-shu saluted. You have always been so polite to me. It's not like Shui Baochai thought of something and couldn't help but sigh. Forget it. I'll go back first. Looking at her leaving figure, Song Qing-shu was stunned. What was going on? Why did he feel that she seemed to have some feelings for Jia Baoyu? Usually, he saw her fake face, but at that moment, it seemed that some of her true feelings had been revealed. However, it was understandable. They grew up together, and Jia Baoyu was beautiful and good at making girls happy. It was no surprise that Shui Baochai had feelings for him. However, Shui Baochai was in the Imperial City Department. Didn't she know that Jia Baoyu had raped women? He has gone far away, but you still keep staring at him. You are so reluctant to let him go. A faint voice came. Song Qing-shu looked back and saw a girl standing on the edge of the rockery. It seemed that she could be blown away by the wind. Sister Lin. Only then did Song Qing-shu remember that in addition to being a sickly girl, Lin Daiyu also had a poisonous tongue. Sister Lin, what's the matter? Lin Daiyu's face changed, and her voice instantly turned cold. Can't I look for you for no reason? I saw you chatting so happily with Sister Bao just now, but when you see me, you have nothing to say? I didn't mean that. Song Qing-shu secretly had a headache. Before he came, he thought of all kinds of situations, but he didn't expect that Jia Baoyu would have some feelings for these young ladies. It should be known that girls were the most sensitive. Sheeran alone was enough to give him a headache. Now, with the addition of Daiyu Baochai, they would most likely find out that there was something unusual about their sweetheart after a few more interactions. Seeing that he had no intention of explaining, Lin Daiyu was finally completely annoyed. She stomped her feet and turned to leave. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly, but he didn't chase after her. He couldn't avoid Lin Daiyu and Shui Baochai anymore. Why would he look for trouble? Oh, our second master is really popular with girls. A silver bell-like laughter came, full of coquettishness. Song Qing-shu's face darkened. He thought, what kind of luck is this? Why are they coming one after another? Is there an end to it? Hello, sister-in-law. The beautiful and coquettish young woman in front of him was none other than Wang Shifeng. Wang Shifeng came to his side and bumped his chest with her shoulder. You used to call me Little Phoenix when we were good, but now you call me sister-in-law. You're really heartless. Just now, when Shui Baochai and Lin Daiyu were talking to Song Qing-shu, Sheeran and other maids naturally hid far away, so Wang Shifeng was not afraid of being seen. The tip of his nose could smell the sweet fragrance coming from her body, and he could faintly feel her plump and well-proportioned body. Song Qing-shu was completely dumbfounded. Jia Baoyu even likes the grass next to his own house. Back when he was on the ship with Qi Fong, he knew of Jia Baoyu's fetish. He seemed to have a special liking for young women from good families. It would be strange if he didn't move when there was a sister-in-law at home. However, Song Qing-shu didn't think that he would be so bold as to really lay his hands on his sister-in-law. Seeing how intimate Wang Shifeng was, it seemed that the two of them didn't just have one affair, but at least 3 or 4. See you at the same place at midnight tonight. Wang Shifeng looked left and right. It was obvious that there were many people around, and she was worried that staying too long would arouse suspicion. The same place? Song Qing-shu really wanted to smash something. How would I know where the usual place of the adulterous couple is? Chapter 2080. As if she had heard his thoughts, Wang Shifeng secretly added, Be careful when you go to the cottage in the backyard. Don't be found by the old maids, or I will not live anymore. After saying that, she smiled at him with an enchanting look in her eyes. Smelling the residual sweet fragrance in the air, Song Qing-shu could not help but be lost in thought. What should he do now? According to common sense, he would not refuse a beautiful young woman like Wang Shifeng to have a friendly match with him. However, the time and place were not right. Based on the relationship between her and Jia Baoyu, if he, a fake, went to have a rendezvous, Jia Baoyu would definitely notice the difference in the most intimate state. Women were quite sensitive in this regard. Moreover, Song Qing-shu was thinking about how to spend the next few days in the Jia's mansion peacefully. He would be free when the imperial court issued an edict to let him participate in the marriage selection in Xixia. Naturally, he would not delay business because of women at this critical time. However, it seemed that he had no choice but to go. They had an affair before. If he did not go, Wang Shifeng would definitely be suspicious. Once she was suspicious, she would probably find out that he was a fake. She would not dare to make it public, but she would secretly remind other people in the mansion. After all, it was a hidden danger. But if he went, would he really fool around with her? After thinking for a long time, he could not find any clues. Song Qing-shu decided to act according to the situation later. When he returned to Yihong courtyard, the maids in the courtyard all surrounded him and kept asking him about his experience during this time. After all, many of them were not qualified to listen when he talked to Mrs. Jia. Song Qing-shu was also speechless. He could only say that Jia Baoyu was too unassuming in the yard, So these maids were so indulgent. Worried that this group of people would find out something, Song Qingshu casually answered them with a few words and went to the study with the excuse of reading. The maids looked at him in shock. Why did reading sound so strange from their master's mouth? Fortunately, Shirin followed him to Mrs. Jia. She hurriedly came out to explain the great changes in the family. The young master did not want to make the old lady too sad, nor did he want to disappoint the late master, so he had to shoulder the responsibility of the family. A group of maids suddenly changed their eyes and began to praise him. Shirin felt that they were too noisy and worried that they would disturb her young master, so she hurriedly drove them away to give Song Qingshu some peace. I'll be right outside. If you need anything, just call me. Shirin refilled his cup of tea and left with a smile on her face. Now that Baoyu was making progress, no one was happier than her. She was Jia Baoyu's personal maidservant, and, at the same time, she was tacitly allowed to be a member of the household. She had even secretly eaten the forbidden fruit. She was not as otherworldly as her master. Of course, she hoped that her man would be more ambitious. Song Qingshu pretended to read for a while in the study while thinking about what to do next. When it was late at night, Shirin, Qingwen, and the others returned to his room to sleep. Then, when it was almost midnight, he quietly slipped out. Unlike the later generations, where there were night owls everywhere, almost all the people in the Jia's mansion were asleep at this time. He didn't see anyone along the way. Only the sound of insects could be heard, which made it even quieter. In the distance, he saw a wooden house next to the flower garden. There was a dim yellow light coming from inside, and he could vaguely see a figure passing by the window. Judging from the figure's graceful figure, it was obvious that Wang Shifeng had arrived. When he was near the wooden house, Wang Shifeng also saw him and hurriedly waved to him, "Baoyu, come in quickly." Under the dim yellow light, Song Qingshu noticed that the current Wang Shifeng was more beautiful than usual. It was obvious that she had dressed up meticulously. Well, her clothes seemed to be much thinner, and a large area of her snow-white skin could be vaguely seen. Wouldn't it be more conspicuous to light a light in the house in the middle of the night? Song Qingshu noticed the light and thought about it. Wang Shifeng smiled tenderly and said, "I'm afraid. I'm alone in this dark room, and I can't even see my own fingers. Why didn't you come earlier? You still have something to be afraid of?" Just as Song Qingshu was about to complain, he suddenly thought of something and secretly glanced at the wall. It seemed that there was someone hiding behind the wooden house. With his current cultivation, the movements of the grass and trees around him couldn't be hidden from him. It was just that he rarely used his full power, or else his ears would be filled with chaotic sounds. He didn't want to cause a nervous breakdown. However, this time he came to the Hongmen banquet, so naturally, the people outside couldn't be hidden from him. There's only one person? Song Qingshu remained calm and collected. Judging from the person's breathing, he should know martial arts, but it wasn't very profound. In addition, this breath seemed to be somewhat familiar. When one's cultivation reached a certain level, he didn't necessarily need to rely on his eyes and ears to recognize people. He could also distinguish them by their qi. Everyone's qi was different. After thinking for a while, Song Qingshu immediately realized why he felt that this person was somewhat familiar. It was because he had just seen him at the table. The person outside was Jiao Yin. What's going on? Could it be that Jiao Yin found out that his wife was cheating on him? This was Song Qingshu's first reaction, but he quickly denied it. With Wang Shifeng's shrewdness, it was impossible for her husband to find out if she really had an affair. Moreover, Jiao Yin was waiting outside at this time, but he didn't come in to stop them in advance. Would he only be happy when the boat entered the alley? Naturally, Song Qingshu didn't think that Jiao Yin was such a pervert. The only possibility was that the couple was playing badger games. Thinking of the analysis of everyone's situation before coming to the Jia's mansion, it was not difficult to figure out that the couple was eagerly waiting for the inheritance. In the end, his sudden return, Jia Baoyu, messed up all their plans. How ruthless, letting his wife personally use the honey trap. Song Qingshu somewhat admired Jiao Yin. He was really able to endure things that ordinary people couldn't. Don't just stand there. You haven't said anything after seeing me for so long. Wang Shifeng pouted, faintly showing a hint of coquettishness. Having guessed the couple's plan, how could Song Qingshu not know what she was planning? Previously, he was still uncertain about the relationship between Jia Baoyu and her. Now, it seemed that if there was really an affair between them, Wang Shifeng wouldn't also use such a scheme because she was worried that their relationship would be exposed. Sister-in-law, why did you call me over so late at night? Song Qingshu bowed respectfully. Sister-in-law, a strange look flashed in Wang Shifeng's eyes. She thought that she had guessed wrong. There are no outsiders at this time. Why are you so distant? Men and women shouldn't touch each other. If someone sees it, it's inevitable that they will get into trouble. Song Qingshu took a step back. Wang Shifeng thought to herself, you are always touching this and that in Grandview Garden. Why are you pretending to be a gentleman at this time? We have long. Oh, you're so annoying. Why did you come back this time? Wang Shifeng decided to test him one last time. Song Qingshu made a blank expression. What is sister-in-law talking about? Noticing his expression, Wang Shifeng thought to herself, could it be that Baoyu really came back? Thinking that her husband and wife's plan failed at the last moment, she couldn't help but grit her teeth. Now, even if it's really Baoyu, can't he seduce him? At that time, if he does such a shameful thing, let's see if he still has the face to inherit the title. If sister-in-law doesn't have anything else to say, I'll leave first. Song Qingshu did not want to fight with the couple here. He had enough things to consider. Wait a minute, Wang Shifeng hurriedly chased after him. Suddenly, she cried out in pain. As if she tripped over something, she directly fell into Song Qingshu's arms. Hugging the soft and plump body in his arms, a sweet fragrance assaulted his nose. Song Qingshu couldn't help but stare blankly. He clearly felt that Jiao Yin's breathing outside the room had quickened a lot. Recommending a friend's new book, Xiaoming's Medical God. It's fat and can be slaughtered. Chapter 2081. This couple really knows how to have fun. Song Qingshu secretly complained, but since the other party wanted to act, he was happy to play along. Sister-in-law, what's wrong with you? She fell into his arms, feeling the masculine aura unique to men. Wang Shifeng couldn't help but think of the situation in the wedding room, but she immediately reacted, and her face instantly turned red. Sister-in-law, are you not feeling well? Why is your face red? Song Qingshu looked very worried. I'm fine, thank you, Baoyu. As soon as Wang Shifeng said the words, she secretly cursed. How could she be fine? How could she develop if she was fine? She reacted quickly, and when the other party helped her up, she suddenly screamed, covered her ankle, and showed a painful expression. What's wrong with you? Song Qingshu was really impressed. This drama really came out of nowhere. Maybe I accidentally twisted it just now. Wang Shifeng's eyes were sparkling, as if she was about to cry. Song Qingshu quietly looked at her to see what she was going to do next. Seeing that he didn't speak, Wang Shifeng also cursed in her heart. He was not cooperative at all, and the answer she had prepared was not useful at all. But things had come to this point, she could only take the initiative to say, can you help me see if my foot is injured? How? Song Qingshu blinked his eyes, looking as pure as a piece of white paper. Wang Shifeng's teeth were about to break, but she could only bear it and said, of course, take off my shoes and socks. I'm in so much pain now that I don't dare to move. After saying that, she seemed to think of something and hurriedly added, I just took a bath and changed clothes before coming out, so your hands won't be dirty. Since she said that, Song Qingshu naturally couldn't refuse, so he took off her shoes and socks. He had to admit that her feet were round and white, with a special kind of beauty, but he was not in the mood to play pedicure with her now, so he directly reached out and pressed her ankle. Is it here? Although he knew that she was pretending, Song Qingshu still checked it, and there was really no injury. A little bit more. Wang Shifeng looked shy. A little more? Song Qingshu frowned. Here? Just a little bit more. Wang Shifeng bit her lips tightly. Her lips shone with a moist luster. Song Qingshu. This was blatant seduction. If he went any higher, his hand would reach into her skirt. Song Qingshu looked at her with a faint smile. Sister-in-law, I'm afraid it's not good to go any higher, right? Wang Shifeng's eyes were like silk. Even I'm not afraid. You're a man, so what are you afraid of? Song Qing-shu paid careful attention and realized that Zhao Yin still had no intention of coming in. He thought to himself, what the hell is he doing? Must I touch his wife before coming in? Song Qing-shu was really curious about what the couple was planning. Even if they rushed in later, what would that mean? Announced to the residents that he seduced Wang Shifeng? However, based on Mrs. Jia's love for Jia Baoyu and the age of both parties, perhaps everyone would suspect that Wang Shifeng seduced Jia Baoyu. She was such a smart person, so it was impossible for her to not think of this. Therefore, Song Qing-shu decided to cooperate with them. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome if the two of them kept secretly planning to deal with him. Sister-in-law, your skin is really good. Song Qing-shu deliberately raised his voice. Sure enough, Zhao Yin's breathing became heavier when he heard this. He could clearly feel him pacing back and forth, obviously hesitating. After a while, he seemed to have made up his mind and left in a hurry. He left. Song Qing-shu was instantly dumbfounded. Shouldn't he rush out to grab that thing at this time? Why did he turn around and leave? Baoyu, why are you so bad? Wang Shifeng pushed him as she secretly glanced out of the room. Why hadn't her husband come in yet? Song Qing-shu did not want to be so passive all the time, so he secretly transferred a wisp of joyful, vital energy into her body. Wang Shifeng did not know martial arts, so she did not realize what was happening. However, she quickly noticed the changes in her body. There seemed to be a warm current flowing out of her body, making her feel weak all over. Oh, she couldn't help but let out an extremely sweet moan from her throat, startling even herself. Song Qing-shu looked at her with a faint smile. Sister-in-law, what's wrong? I don't know what's wrong either. Hearing the unprecedented seductiveness in her voice, Wang Shifeng also panicked a little. She wondered why she was so forgetful. He only touched her twice. How did it? Could it be that the rumors were true, that Baoyu was a woman's Achilles heel? Sensing that something was wrong, Wang Shifeng retracted her leg and struggled to stand up. However, as soon as she stood up, she fell back into his arms. This time, it was not an act. Her legs were really weak. Sister-in-law, can I understand that you are seducing me? Song Qing-shu hugged her graceful and plump body. He could feel the heat of her skin through her clothes. No, it's not that. Wang Shifeng finally panicked. Although she was usually outgoing and passionate, she was after all born into a wealthy family. In this aspect, she was more conservative than expected. Zhao Yin had always been lustful, and she never allowed him to use some of the novel tricks he learned from his concubines on her. Today, she was only willing to sacrifice less for the sake of the future of the couple. She wanted to seduce Jia Baoyu and cause him to reveal some flaws, cutting off his path to inheriting the title. However, her husband did not come in at the appointed time, and her body was extremely strange. While she still had some rationality left, she decided to stop the plan and return home first. Unfortunately, her body seemed to not listen to her, and she fell into his arms. Being inhaled by his masculine scent, her body became even more weak. Let me go. Wang Shifeng's face became redder. Song Qing-shu spread his hands. You clearly fell in my arms. I didn't touch you. Wang Shifeng knew that he was telling the truth, but she didn't know why. But deep down, she wanted to lie in his arms. It would be even better if he hugged her a little tighter. Song Qing-shu knew that the joke was over, so he said, I think I know why you call me here tonight. However, I want to tell you that I'm no longer the child I used to be after experiencing so many things outside. If you do anything improper in the future, don't blame me for being impolite. Feeling the chill in his voice, Wang Shifeng couldn't help but tremble. Just what had he experienced outside for him to suddenly become so frightening? Song Qing-shu suddenly frowned. What's second brother Lian doing? Why isn't he back yet? Wang Shifeng's expression changed. He's not outside? Song Qing-shu saw that she didn't seem to be faking it. So he said, he left when I took off my shoes. Wang Shifeng's expression changed, and her body trembled. She hurriedly said, take me away from here quickly. Why? Song Qing-shu's brows furrowed. There's no time to explain. Let's go. Wang Shifeng's face was full of panic. Song Qingshu could vaguely hear footsteps in the distance. There seemed to be quite a few people coming this way. He hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he grabbed Wang Shifeng's arm and sneaked out from the other side of the wooden hut. What's going on? Song Qingshu hugged Wang Shifeng and hid in a nearby tree. He saw Jiao Yin and a group of people break into the hut. Unfortunately, the hut was already empty, so they couldn't find anything. Wang Shifeng gritted her teeth and said, "Damn it, he's been so attached to Second Sister Yu lately. I heard that he wanted to make Second Sister Yu his wife, but I didn't take it to heart. After all, my family is here. Who would have thought that this bastard would really take action? Not only does he want to get rid of you tonight, but he also wants to ruin my reputation. That way, he can justifiably be with Second Sister Yu. I was wondering why my body felt so strange. He must have put that despicable drug in the tea I drank." Hearing her analysis, Song Qingshu's expression became very interesting. At this moment, Wang Shifeng suddenly raised her head, and her eyes were very misty. "Bao Yu, is sister-in-law beautiful?" "Yes, she is." Song Qingshu nodded. Even the most picky person could see that she was a first-class beauty. "Then you?" Wang Shifeng bit her lip. Obviously, she had a strong psychological struggle. "Do you want sister-in-law?" Chapter 2082. Under the moonlight, Wang Shifeng looked particularly hot and beautiful. Song Qingshu's heart moved, but he immediately dispelled the thought. "Sister-in-law, don't joke around." "I'm not joking." Wang Shifeng stared at Jiao Yin in the distance. "I helped him wholeheartedly, but he schemed against me like this. The key is for another vixen. I can't swallow this." Song Qingshu was silent. At first, he thought it was a trick of the couple, but now it seemed that it was obviously not. Jiao Yin's way of doing things was too black-hearted. "Doesn't he want to be cuckolded? Then I'll do as he wishes." After Wang Shifeng finished speaking, she noticed Song Qingshu's expression and couldn't help but sigh faintly. "I know you must look down on me now, but I'm really not that kind of fickle person. This time, although I deliberately sacrificed myself with him to get the title of Duke Ronghua, if the target was not you, I would never agree." "Really?" For her words, Song Qingshu was noncommittal. A woman's words, especially a beautiful woman's words, could not be easily believed. Seeing his expression, how could a smart woman like Wang Shifeng not guess what he was thinking? She couldn't help but look sad. "Forget it. My husband schemed against me like this. Even you think I'm that kind of frivolous woman. What's the point of me living?" After saying that, she directly jumped to the side. Now the two of them were on the tree. It was not high, but it was not low. If she fell directly like this, if it was light, she would break a bone. If it was heavy, it would be life-threatening. Song Qingshu pulled her back. He was not the kind of person who would not help when someone was in danger. Okay, I believe you." Wang Shifeng's worry turned into joy. She suddenly looked at him curiously. "Do you know martial arts now?" Just now, in order to avoid the people her husband found, she had no time to think about these things. Now that she came back to her senses, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. Song Qingshu didn't bat an eyelid and casually explained, "My father taught me a martial art in the past, but I didn't pay much attention to it at that time. Later, when I was imprisoned in Mongolia, I had nothing to do, so I started to train seriously. That's how I got the ability to escape later on. No wonder everyone says that you're talented and intelligent. You managed to learn martial arts so easily." Wang Shifeng's beautiful eyes shone. "After experiencing so many things, I find that you've become more and more mature. The little boy from before is now more and more charming." Song Qingshu smiled faintly, not taking her compliment to heart. Noticing that Jiao Yin's group was gradually dispersing, he said, "The people below are about to leave. You could go back first." This time, the people Jiao Yin found were all servants or maids of the Fu. It seemed that he hadn't lost his head and didn't directly run to the Jiao matriarch to complain. It was obvious that he was afraid of arousing suspicion. Instead, he planned to accidentally expose the two of them. It should be known that the people in the Fu were very talkative. This kind of thing would quickly spread to everyone without him saying it. "No, I'm not going back." Wang Shifeng bit her lip and hugged him even tighter. Feeling the voluptuous and moving figure in his arms, the mature body of the young woman exuded a shocking heat, causing Song Qingshu's expression to become somewhat unnatural. He hurriedly said, "Sister-in-law, don't mess around." Who knew that Wang Shifeng seemed to sense something and glanced down, her beautiful cheeks like two burning clouds. "Bao Yu, you've really grown up." Song Qingshu held his breath. Obviously, the two of them were so close, and the other party's skirt was thin, so she had keenly sensed the changes in his body. At this time, Wang Shifeng's eyes seemed to be dripping water. She moved closer to his ear and said, "The drug that bastard gave me has taken effect. If you ask me to go back now, what if I'm caught by that servant? Won't I be defiled by those lowly people?" Song Qingshu thought that her current reaction was due to the Huanqi genuine qi, but he was very careful to control the amount. She shouldn't have such a big reaction. Could it be that Jiao Yin really drugged her in advance? Damn, what kind of mentality is this? "Bao Yu, don't be afraid." Wang Shifeng's eyes still had a few traces of clarity. As if she had guessed his scruples, she quickly said, "Now I'm not scheming against you. I really need you to help me. How can I help you with this kind of thing?" Song Qingshu was also helpless. He originally came to the Jia's mansion just to go through the motions, and soon he would receive the news and leave Xixia. Who knew that so many things would happen in such a short period of time? Just like what you and Shiren did. Wang Shifeng giggled. "I'm not Sister Lin. Miss Bao, you can't fool me by pretending to be innocent." Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows, keenly getting enough information from her words. It seemed that Jia Baoyu used to get along with Lin Daiyu and Xue Baochai with a different face, so they didn't know about his evil side. Seeing that he didn't speak, Wang Shifeng's tears instantly fell like a broken pearl necklace. "I've already said this, and you still, in your eyes, am I so lowly, shameless, and unbearable?" Of course not. Although you usually seem a bit coquettish, you are actually dignified and self-disciplined. You have never done anything out of line. Song Qingshu recalled that Jia Rui, a disciple of the branch family, had been smitten by her beauty and had had some crooked thoughts about her. In the end, he had been played by her and ended up in a miserable state. It was clear that she was extremely conservative in this aspect. "Then do you think that I'm not as beautiful as your sister Lin and sister Bao?" Wang Shifeng continued to ask. Song Qingshu still told the truth. Plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum each have their own advantages. Although each of them has a unique temperament, they are not as mature and beautiful as you. He still wanted to say something, but a hot body had already come up to him, making it impossible for him to say the rest of the words. Wang Shifeng was a mature woman, and, at the same time, she was also a smart woman. She knew when to take the initiative and when to be reserved. If she was really rejected today, she would never be able to raise her head again in the future. She had already sent herself to the door, yet she was still rejected. This was a devastating blow to a woman, especially to a woman like her, who had always boasted of her beauty. After all, Song Qingshu was not a person who cultivated the Tao with a pure heart and few desires. He had long been wriggling in her arms, causing a ball of evil fire. At this time, how could he bear it? After a long time, he finally calmed down and said, "I'll take you to another place." "No, let's do it here." Wang Shifeng's eyes moved, and her eyebrows revealed 1,000 kinds of amorous feelings. For a moment, Song Qingshu couldn't react. Wang Shifeng bit her lip and said angrily, "Where are we going at this time? There are a lot of maids and old women around us, and there are too many people. I don't want to be discovered. The forest here is lush, and no one can see us. Isn't it just right?" Her way of doing things is quite wild. Song Qingshu's throat was extremely dry, and he couldn't help but feel a little tempted. He had never had such an experience. The words just now had already exhausted the last bit of Wang Shifeng's rationality. Soon, her whole body was burning with passion, and she hugged the man beside her tightly. Both of them were very mature people, and their cooperation was very tacit. It could even be said that they were very familiar with each other. Soon, Wang Shifeng's whole body trembled, and Song Qingshu couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. No wonder everyone said that women were flesh and blood made of water. After an unknown period of time, Song Qingshu sent Wang Shifeng to the vicinity of her courtyard. Wang Shifeng lowered her head, and her face was full of a complicated expression. "All right, don't send me off. It's not good to be seen by others." Song Qingshu grunted in response. Wang Shifeng continued to say, "Don't tell anyone about what happened today." Song Qingshu nodded. "Okay." Also, Wang Shifeng hesitated for a moment, then added, "What happened today was just an accident. Don't look for me in the future." The corners of Song Qingshu's mouth rose slightly, but he still replied, "Okay." Seeing his reaction, Wang Shifeng felt a little upset, but her rationality made her not say anything, and she hurriedly ran back to the house. Just as she was thinking about what had just happened, she suddenly heard a gloomy and angry voice. "Where did you go just now?" Chapter 2083. Wang Shifeng was still immersed in what had just happened and hadn't come back to her senses yet. Now that she suddenly heard a voice, she couldn't help but be startled. She looked back and found Jiao Yin sitting on the bed with a gloomy face, looking at her. Wang Shifeng snorted and asked, "Where were you just now? Didn't I just find someone as promised?" Jiao Yin noticed that there was a faint blush on Wang Shifeng's white and tender cheeks, and her eyes were full of blurriness. That kind of feeling made Jiao Yin feel a little regretful. Was it really worth it? Promise? Wang Shifeng sneered. "Do we make that promise? I'm afraid you didn't just go to find someone to deal with Jia Baoyu. You also wanted to ruin my reputation." Jiao Yin smiled embarrassedly and wanted to put his arm around his wife's shoulder. "How could that be? You think too much." Wang Shifeng dodged and instantly exploded. "Why not? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. I turned a blind eye when you and second sister you were fooling around. Now you want to get rid of me and help her get the position. Do you think I'm dead?" Jiao Yin felt a little guilty and subconsciously explained, "You misunderstood. I really didn't mean that." "Okay, I have my own eyes. Go away. I don't want to see you now." Wang Shifeng pointed to the door and ordered him to leave. Jiao Yin had no choice but to walk out. He originally wanted to ask where his wife and Jia Baoyu had gone, but he thought that she was angry, so he thought that he would ask her when she calmed down. As for being kicked out of the room, he didn't care. He could go to second sister Yu and have some fun. Thinking of her gentle appearance, his lower abdomen was a little restless. After Song Qingshu separated from Wang Shifeng, he decided to go to Li Macho's place to see why she had suddenly become Miaoyu. He had already found out where Miaoyu's master lived, and the Jia Mansion had specially prepared a courtyard for her, called the Black Jade Nunnery. In the Battle of Wutang Mountain, Jia Sherdao and many of his direct subordinates had suffered heavy casualties. The Jia Mansion was no longer as strict as before. Song Qingshu easily avoided some patrolling guards and soon arrived at the Black Jade Nunnery. Song Qingshu was going to return to his original appearance before going to find her. After all, it was inconvenient to expose his identity as Jia Baoyu. Suddenly, a woman whispered in his ear. Although the voice was low, Song Qingshu still heard clearly. "That Baoyu in your residence, just looking at him makes people angry, especially those shifty eyes. If I saw him in Jianghu before, I would have dug his eyeballs out." Li Macho's cold voice was filled with killing intent. Song Qingshu held his breath and wondered. "I've just looked at you a few more times during dinner." At this time, another gentle voice sounded. "Sister, don't mind him. That's just how he is. Whenever he sees a beautiful girl, he can't take his eyes off her. There's so many beauties in the Grandview Garden, so naturally his standards are high. To be able to stare at you without blinking, doesn't that just prove how beautiful you are?" Song Qingshu recognized the gentlewoman's voice. It was the young widow, Li Wan. Humph. Although Li Macho didn't admit it, she obviously enjoyed it. Which woman didn't care about her appearance? Father's arrangement is also very thoughtful. I live in the Jia Mansion most of the time, and third sister is traveling in the western regions. There is no one in the mansion to talk to you. Father is a man, and he can't take care of you. Li Wan comforted her in a low voice. Li Macho snorted. You don't have to speak up for him. In the end, it's just that he doesn't like my Jianghu habits. He wants me to come to the Grandview Garden and interact more with the other young ladies and noble ladies so that I can learn from them. Li Wan laughed awkwardly and said, Father is the chancellor of the directorate after all. He teaches others. His own daughter should set an example. Li Macho's voice was a little angry and said, Isn't he afraid that I will kill all the people who offend me in the mansion on a whim? Outside, Song Qingshu nodded in agreement. Li Macho was a devil in Jianghu who killed without batting an eye. Sometimes, people were killed by her just because they were surnamed he. There were so many disputes in the Grandview Garden, and it was possible that old things would happen again. Sister, although you usually pretend to be fierce, you're still a good person. I guess you don't want to see father in a difficult situation. Li Wan laughed. Behind her, the two women whispered in their ears. They were playing together, but they couldn't hear it clearly. Song Qingshu nodded his head. Li Macho was originally a good girl, but because of Lu Zhanyuan's betrayal, she was pushed to the extreme. Now that she had returned to the embrace of her family, the warmth of family should be able to slowly heal her pain. Now that he knew the whole story, Song Qingshu didn't go in to meet them again. After all, it was the middle of the night, and it was not convenient to go in and talk among the women in the boudoir. As for why Li Macho changed her name to Miaoyu, it must be because Li Shouzhong was worried that his daughter's reputation in Jianghu was too bad and would scare the people in the Jia Mansion. So he simply changed her name, which could be regarded as a farewell to the past and a new life. He quietly returned to the Yihong courtyard. Seeing that Shirin and the others didn't find anything unusual, he went to sleep peacefully. The next morning, Shirin, Qingwen, and the other maids helped Song Qingshu to dress up, which gave Song Qingshu a headache. No matter how exquisite his disguise was, he would still show flaws when he washed his face. Fortunately, not long after, a servant came to report that the palace had come. The imperial edict was issued. Song Qingshu was delighted. He took the opportunity to grab the handkerchief and casually wipe his face. Then, he put on his clothes and walked to the main hall. The content of the imperial edict was expected. The gist of the imperial edict was that the Xixia country was about to select a bride. Some outstanding young masters of aristocratic families of suitable age were specially selected to go to the Xixia country and encourage them to win glory for the country. It would be best if they could marry the princess. It was also an opportunity to strengthen the diplomatic relations with the Xixia country, so that the Xixia country would not be roped in by the enemy. In addition to Jia Baoyu, the more important ones were Xue Pan of the Xue family, Lu Shidao, and Lu Shisheng of the Lu family of Xiangyang, and so on. These were decided by Song Qingshu and Ren Yingying in secret. With such an imperial edict, the whole Jia Mansion was naturally excited. Many people came to visit and congratulate Jia Baoyu. Ordinary people only thought it was a great honor. Only the mother of the Jia family wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. In the end, she just told Jia Baoyu to take good care of herself and not to force herself. After Lin Daiyu and the other girls heard the news, they all locked themselves in the courtyard. Anyone could see that they were in a bad mood, but no one wanted to get in trouble. Song Qingshu just happened to be free, so that these people close to Jia Baoyu wouldn't see through him. In the evening, Liao Yingzhong found Song Qingshu and said, Young master, you just need to pretend this trip. Don't marry the princess of a Xixia country. Oh, why? Song Qingshu pretended to be surprised and asked. Liao Yingzhong explained, What's so good about a princess of the Nanman Kingdom? Even if she has the beauty of a fairy, it won't help you. The Xixia country is too far away from the Great Song. If something really happens here, they can't do anything. It won't be as good as marrying the ladies of the Xue family or the Shi family, and it won't even be as good as the lady of the Lin family. Well, I see. Song Qingshu wasn't surprised. As the chief advisor of Jia Shidao, if Liao Yingzhong couldn't even see this, he shouldn't be in the position anymore. I don't know where the palace got the news. They all know that you just came back. Liao Yingzhong's eyes showed a trace of suspicion, but it was not the time to think about it. He quickly said, "In addition, I used my connections and arranged for the lady of the Shui family to protect you all the way. You could take the opportunity to get close to her on the way." Shui Baochai. Song Qing-shu was stunned. As if he saw his confusion, Liao Yingzhong explained, "This time, Lady Shui's brother is also one of the candidates. Otherwise, no matter how powerful I am, I wouldn't be able to invite the lady of the Shui family." Song Qing-shu imitated Jia Baiyu's tone and said, "But if something really happens, Sister Baoyu will definitely protect her brother immediately. As for me," Liao Yingzhong stroked his beard and smiled. "Don't worry, young master. The lady of the Shui family will only protect you in name. I just want to use this opportunity to matchmake the two of you. As for your real safety, there's someone else. Central Plains. Red. Come on in. Come. Miao Shu House." Chapter 2084. Zhong Yuan Dianhong. Hearing Liao Yingzhong's words, Song Qingshu's mind went blank. Could there be someone like Shimin Chueshue? Soon, a man dressed in black walked in. His face was like that of a corpse, but what was more eye-catching were his eyes. These were a pair of eyes that were as cold as ice, as fierce as a wolf's, as ashen as the snow on a mountain peak, yet as firm as a snow-covered mountain peak. "Young master, almost all the masters of the Isle of Heroes were wiped out in the Battle of Mount Wudong. He is an expert that I've found after much difficulty in Jianghu." Liao Yingzhong's tone was a little proud. Obviously, he was very satisfied with his martial arts. "Dianhong, this is Second Master Bao. You will protect his safety for a while. I only know how to kill, I don't know how to protect." The black-clothed man's voice was strange and unique. It was cold, deep, hoarse, and short. It didn't seem like it came from a human's throat. Although his voice was low and hoarse, it had a kind of magical power that pierced one's heart, causing one to never forget a single word he said. Liao Yingzhong held his breath, but he reacted quickly. "On the trip to Western Xia, kill all those who want to harm young master. Consider it as protecting him." "Good." There seemed to be a hint of excitement in the tone of Little Red of the Central Plains. His eyes flashed with a cruel, beast-like green light, as if the greatest hobby in his life was to kill, and the purpose of his existence was only to kill. Song Qingshu looked at him with interest. "There will be many dangers on this trip to Western Xia. I don't know how good his swordsmanship is. Can he really protect me?" Zhong Yuan Dianhong did not speak, as if answering such a question would be a disgrace to his identity. Liao Yingzhong answered on his behalf. "Young master, please rest assured. I found someone to test him. Although his swordsmanship is not at the peak, it is more than enough to kill." Worried that his strength would be doubted, Liao Yingzhong continued, "He is the most famous killer in the underground world." Zhong Yuan Dianhong frowned. It is not a good thing for a killer to be famous. Only then did Liao Yingzhong explain, "I'm just giving an example. Only a few people in the circle know your name. The others who know the name of Red Dot in the Central Plains are all dead. So, although your swordsmanship is great, very few people in the Jianghu know about it." Song Qingshu secretly nodded. No wonder he had never heard of this person before. It could only be said that the world was big, and there were indeed hidden dragons and crouching tigers. However, he soon thought of a problem. He vaguely remembered that Little Red of the Central Plains was a top assassin trained by Shui Shaoran. He could be considered his disciple. There were people from the Shui family and Shui Yi in this world, so it was likely that there were also people from Shui Shao. In this way, was the Little Red of the Central Plains a member of the Jia family or a spy sent by the Shui family? Noticing that Liao Yingzhong was excited to meet a top master, Song Qingshu did not speak out his doubts. Firstly, he could not explain how he knew the relationship between Little Red of the Central Plains and Shui Shaoran. Secondly, there was no need to say it. Anyway, he was a fake, and it would be better for him to fish in troubled waters if the other party was a spy. Seeing that the two had known each other, Liao Yingzhong waved his hand to dismiss Little Red of the Central Plains. Then, he continued to instruct Song Qingshu on the things he should pay attention to in Xixia. It could be said that he was very detailed and did not leave out any aspect. In addition, he also mentioned that during the period when Jia Bayu went to Xixia, he would stay in Lin and to gather the remaining forces of the Jia Mansion and the Isle of Heroes, deal with those traitors, and accumulate strength. He would wait for Jia Baoyu's return before launching a complete counterattack. Looking at his serious expression, Song Qingshu secretly sighed with emotion. He was indeed a loyal subordinate, but it was a pity that he had his own master. I hope that young master can win the beauty on this trip. Liao Yingzhong smiled and cupped one hand in the other before leaving. Thank you for your blessings. Song Qingshu knew that the beauty he mentioned was not the princess of Xixia, but Xue Baochai. At this time, the other candidates of Xixia's betrothal contest were also receiving guidance from their elders in their respective homes. In the Xue mansion, Xueji looked at his excited son and could not help but frown. Why are you so happy? Isn't it worth being happy to be selected as a candidate of Xixia's betrothal contest? Xue Pan was startled for a moment. Then he beamed with joy and said, I heard that the princess of Xixia is as beautiful as a goddess. She is unparalleled. Xueji's frown deepened. What does it have to do with you? Of course it has to do with me, Xue Pan said. In terms of family background and talent, who can compare to me? Originally, Jia Baoyu was a formidable opponent, but his father died in Mount Wudong and his family declined. He is no longer a threat. You are quite confident. Xueji was so angry that he laughed. However, what his son said was somewhat reasonable. In terms of family background, no one in the great song could compare to him. In terms of appearance, he could be considered a handsome man. However, in terms of talent, did he have it? Otherwise, he would not be called the local bully. This is also because of father's good intentions. Xue Pan smiled foolishly. Seeing his son like this, Xueji was very angry. He thought that it was a pity that Baochai was a girl. Otherwise, he would not have to worry so much. Suppressing his anger, Xueji said, You can just take this trip to Xixia as a sightseeing trip. Just don't cause any trouble. Also, remember not to stay too far away from your sister. Otherwise, she will not be able to protect you if you are in danger. Xue Pan could not help but say, I'm a dignified man. Why would I need my sister's protection? Xueji frowned. Originally, he wanted to tell his son not to marry the princess. With his power in the Song dynasty, he did not need to rely on a princess of Xixia. He wanted his daughter-in-law to be a descendant of a famous family in the imperial court. Only in this way could they unite and help each other. As for his son being selected this time, he had no choice but to let his son go. However, seeing his son's mischievous appearance, Xueji thought that even if he tried his best, the princess of Xixia would not fall for him. Why would he need to tell his son to marry her? Get out of here. After understanding all this, Xueji waved his hand impatiently and ordered his son to leave. At this time, the LV family was in a different situation. LV Wenhuan looked at his son and nephew in front of him and said, Shi Dao, Shi Sheng, you must try your best to win the favor of the princess of Xixia. The other candidates who will go with you this time are mostly playboys. How can they compare with you in terms of real ability and learning? LV Shi Dao could not help but say, Uncle, Xixia is a barbarian country after all. Why don't we set our sights on the noble ladies in the capital? These ideas were deeply rooted in the bones of every Song citizen. Of all the things in the world, scholars were the best. Naturally, they looked down on the barbarians around them. LV Wenhuan sighed and said, Today is different from the past. If it were in the past, of course we would want you to marry the daughters of the nobles in the capital. But after the Battle of Wudong Mountain, others may not know the truth. But do you think we don't? The imperial court didn't do anything to us for the time, being just for stability. But after 3 or 5 years, when everything is stable, our LV family will face a disaster. LV Shi Dao and LV Shi Sheng pursed their lips. They were both smart people and naturally understood the seriousness of the matter. When the emperor returned to the capital, he took them back with him. To put it nicely, it was to reward the LV family, but in fact, they knew they had become hostages. We can't stay in the southern Song dynasty anymore, so we have to find another way out. LV Wenhuan's face was gloomy. Back then, the Qin family could go to Xixia and live a good life there. We can certainly follow their example. LV Shisheng said, now that Xixia is not as powerful as before, why don't we directly turn to the Mongolians? LV Wenhuan looked at him approvingly and said, originally, I wanted to remind you, but I didn't expect you to think of it in advance. Yes, this time, you have to fight for the position of Xixia's son-in-law. Even if you fail, you have to take the opportunity to get close to the Mongolian prince. This time, the Mongolian prince will also participate in the marriage selection. You can't miss such a good opportunity. As long as you have a relationship with the Mongolians, you will be the hero of the whole family. Chapter 2085. LV Sherdao couldn't help but pour cold water on him, but we fought against the Mongolians in Xiangyang a few years ago and killed many Mongolians. With this grudge, it's not appropriate to turn to the Mongolians for help. So our first choice is to participate in the Xixia marriage contest. You two brothers can work together to see who has the chance to become the emperor's son-in-law. LV Wenhuan answered. LV Sherdao and LV Shisheng looked at each other and nodded slightly. Now that their family was in danger, they wouldn't fight against each other anymore. When they arrived at Xixia, they would see who the Xixia people would appreciate more. Instead of being jealous, the other brother would cooperate to protect his brother and finally win the beauty. But the participants in the Xixia marriage contest are all the princes and grandsons of various countries. We are fine, but we don't have much hope for those from other countries, especially the Mongolian princes. Lu Shisheng was usually very arrogant in Xiangyang, but in front of the world's top second generations, he was still very self-aware. We can do our best and leave the rest to God. LV Wenhuan comforted him. Even if we can't become the emperor's son-in-law, it's good to have a good relationship with the Mongolian princes. This time, it's the Mongolian 5th Prince Zulwu who will participate in the Xixia marriage contest, not the 4th Prince Kublai who fought against us in Xiangyang. As far as I know, the Mongolian princes fight fiercely with each other, so Zulwu won't care about the grudge between us and Kublai. So this is our chance. LV Sherdao nodded. Well, if we can't do it, we can help Zulwu and let him become the emperor's son-in-law. It's also a favor for him. You're worth teaching. LV Wenhuan looked pleased. When we get there, you can act according to the circumstances. I can't leave the capital, so I can't accompany you. Besides, he hesitated for a long time and then said, if you can't become the emperor's son-in-law of Xixia and can't get in touch with the Mongolians, you should take the opportunity to escape. Don't come back. The LV family will be punished eventually. You don't have to die with us old bones. Father, uncle, we swear to live and die with the LV family. LV Sherdao and LV Shisheng knelt down together. LV Wenhuan helped them up and said, don't say such silly things. If you can escape safely, the LV family will still have some hope left, and the whole family won't be annihilated. You have the hope of your family on your shoulders, so you must live well. Of course, this is to prepare for the worst. You don't have to worry too much. After all, it hasn't reached that stage yet. We'll do our best in this trip to the Western Xia. The Liu brothers' eyes were filled with tears, but their tone had become unprecedentedly firm. After Song Qingshu saw Liao Yingzhong off, he left the Jiao mansion quietly. He was going to Western Xia and had to bid farewell to some people. Originally, Little Red of the Central Plains was left behind by Liao Yingzhong in the Jiao residence to ensure his safety. However, with Song Qingshu's current cultivation level, he left without a sound. Little Red did not notice anything unusual at all. Song Qingshu was the first to rush in the direction of the imperial palace. At present, Ren Yingying was impersonating his identity as the person in charge of the imperial armaments. Normally, she would spend the night in the imperial palace and would rarely return to the Prince of Qi's residence. He didn't know how many times he had entered and exited the imperial palace. Now, entering the imperial palace was as natural as returning home. Soon, he arrived at Ren Yingying's current residence. The guards around her were obviously much tighter. All of them were experts carefully selected from the Sun-Moon Divine Sect. There were also maids from the Vulture Palace. These were all part of the security system that Song Qing-shu had meticulously constructed. Even with his ability, it was impossible for him to sneak in quietly. Of course, with his great Grandmaster cultivation level, those people would not be able to stop him if he directly barged in. However, after seeing his appearance, those guards returned to their hidden posts one after another. When Ren Yingying saw that her lover had returned, she couldn't help but throw herself into his arms. Hugging her soft and alluring body and smelling her elegant and charming fragrance, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but say, "It seems that the rootless tree's secret art is very useful. Your complexion is much rosier now. How can a secret art personally taught by immortal Zhang be ordinary?" Ren Yingying pursed her lips into a smile. Her tone was filled with reverence. Even her father, who had always regarded everyone else as beneath him, would sigh in admiration every time Zhang's sandphone was mentioned. The two of them cuddled for a while. When Song Qing-shu mentioned the purpose of his visit, Ren Yingying's face couldn't help but darken. "You're leaving again so soon. We've always been apart more than together." Noticing her dejected expression, Song Qing-shu's heart was filled with pity and guilt. He subconsciously hugged her even tighter. Ren Yingying quickly recovered. "However, I also understand that you are running for the sake of the world. Naturally, I won't be petty and stop you. I hope that you can succeed soon and end this chaotic world." That way, she had originally wanted to say that he would have more time to accompany her. However, when she thought of how her lover had so many female friends by his side, would he really have a lot of time to accompany her? Thinking of this, she furrowed her pretty eyebrows in annoyance. However, Song Qing-shu's thoughts were stirred up by her. He wasn't originally a Virgin Mary. However, after experiencing the peaceful and contented life of his previous life, and then looking at this world where there were starving people on the streets and countless people selling their children, he really couldn't remain indifferent. After all, these tragic situations were caused by the rise of heroes and the many years of war. Therefore, the idea of unifying the countries and ending this chaotic world became increasingly clear. Of course, he also had his own selfish motives. He also enjoyed the taste of power and also liked beautiful girls. However, at the same time, he was also aware of his responsibilities. It was as if ending the chaos was his mission when he transmigrated to this world. After leaving Ren Yingying's place, Song Qing-shu went to the bedchambers of the two princesses. A few days after the wedding, he left the palace and hid in the Jiao mansion. Now, he was about to arrive at the Xixia country, which was thousands of miles away. He didn't know when they would meet again, so he couldn't help but feel guilty. He originally thought that the two princesses were young and would surely cry and scold him. However, the result was unexpected. Not only did they not cry or make a fuss, but they also constantly reminded him of the things he should pay attention to on the road. Zhao Yuanyuan took out a set of underwear and handed it to him. "I made this myself. I made this." Zhao Huaner, who was on the side, also took out a set of clothes as if presenting a treasure. Her face was a little more bashful. "But it's not as good as sister's." Song Qing-shu was surprised. "You also know how to sew?" Zhao Yuanyuan sighed faintly. "When we were in the laundry yard, there was no one to serve us. Naturally, we learned this." Song Qing-shu couldn't help but hold her little hand. "Those things are in the past. I won't let you be afraid in the future." Zhao Yuanyuan's eyes were slightly red. Those days in the laundry yard were really nightmarish. "I didn't know when it would be my turn. Fortunately, Brother Song, you appeared and saved us. So, we will be grateful to you for the rest of our lives." Song Qing-shu deliberately put on a straight face. "Only gratitude?" Zhao Yuanyuan's face turned red. Zhao Huaner, who was on the side, was outspoken. "Of course there is admiration. Otherwise, why will we marry you?" Only then did Song Qing-shu burst into laughter. He felt very warm as he held the two girls in his arms. Before leaving the palace, Song Qing-shu also made a trip to Concubine Wu's bedroom. Ku, that little girl, had been complaining a lot about him recently. He had to comfort her lest she did something irrational in a moment of anger and ruin the overall plan. Entering the bedroom, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but secretly sigh as he looked at the beautiful young girl by the window. There was a hint of sadness between the young girl's brows that shouldn't have appeared at her age. Clearly, she had a lot on her mind. Aku, hearing his call, the young girl turned her head in disbelief. When she saw his face clearly, she couldn't help but be surprised and happy. Brother Song. The young girl threw herself into his arms with a wisp of fragrance. Song Qing-shu looked at Chun Yuan, who had rushed over after hearing the news, and smiled bitterly. Chun Yuan only secretly sighed and didn't say anything. Aku, you've lost weight during this time, Song Qing-shu said with pity as he wiped away the tears on her cheeks. Aku pouted and said unhappily, "It's your fault for not coming to see me." As if seeing Song Qing-shu's dilemma, Chun Yuan hurriedly helped him out and said, "Aku, Qing-shu is busy every day. He doesn't have the time to care about love affairs. I hate national affairs the most. My father used to be like this too." Aku snorted. It was obvious that she had an unpleasant experience. "I have a gift for you." Song Qing-shu thought that it was fortunate that he was prepared. A gift? Aku blinked her eyes, full of curiosity. Only then did Song Qing-shu walk to the door and come in with a basket. "This is a newborn kitten. I picked it up on the roadside. It's a pity that I'm busy all day and don't have much time to take care of it. Can you help me take care of it?" Aku originally didn't have much interest in cats and dogs, but when she heard that she was helping Song Qing-shu take care of it, she instantly felt that it had a different meaning. She immediately smiled and agreed. "Okay, wow, it's so cute." Seeing the kitten blinking its eyes, Aku felt that her heart was about to melt. Song Qing-shu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this trick worked. He had always been worried that Aku would be too bored staying in the harem. If a woman was bored, she would do too many stupid things. So, he had to find something for her. Thinking of those who raised pets in his previous life, Song Qing-shu immediately had an idea. Of course, he didn't pick up this kitten. How could there be such a coincidence? With his current status, if he wanted to find a beautiful kitten, there would naturally be someone below him who would take care of it for him. How could it be so easy to take care of such a small kitten? Aku obviously didn't have that much time to think about other things. In the future, when she grew attached to the kitten, she would naturally have an additional companion. Also, Song Qing-shu had also thoughtfully chosen a female kitten. That way, when it grew up in the future, it could go on a few dates and come back with a bunch of kittens for Aku to raise. Looking at the young girl's current excited expression, even Song Qing-shu felt that he was being too cunning. After chatting with them for a while in the bedroom, Song Qing-shu saw that Aku's attention was all on the kitten, so he used the opportunity to bid farewell. After leaving the imperial palace, Song Qing-shu went to Li Qingluo's residence in And. He asked her to look after Run Yingying and the others. After all, as the White Lotus Mother, she could be considered as half a local in Linen. However, Li Qingluo pursed her lips and directly refused. "I'm going back to Montois Villa. I don't want to look after those women for you unless you pay me." "What payment?" Song Qing-shu was very curious. Whether it was her identity as the Madam of the Wang family on the surface or the White Lotus Mother in secret, was there anything she could not obtain? Li Qingluo arrived in front of him and gently rubbed his chest. She bit her red lips gently with her pearly teeth, which shone with an enchanting light. "Stay with me for a night. Unless I call for you, you're not allowed to stop." The flames in Song Qing-shu's body were immediately ignited. With a roar, he directly picked her up and pressed her down on the table beside him. Chapter 2086. The next day, when the Jia mansion was about to set off, Song Qing-shu was still reminiscing the wonderful feeling of yesterday. He could only sigh that he and Li Qingluo were too compatible in all aspects. Moreover, she had a unique, mature charm and would not pester him like ordinary young girls. For him, who was now plagued with a headache, it was even rarer, because they knew that Jia Baoyu was going to Xixia. All the members of the Jia mansion came out to see him off. Whether it was sincere or not, they all wished him success. Only one person did not come out, and that was Lin Dayu. She was already very unhappy when she learned that Jia Baoyu was going to Xixia's matchmaking contest. Later, when she learned that Shui Baochai was going with him, she instantly became jealous. In this regard, Song Qingshu could only express his regret. Sister Lin was indeed a good girl. Compared to the other girls in the mansion who more or less wore a mask, her character was much purer. Of course, in the eyes of many people, she would appear a little pretentious. If it was another time, Song Qingshu might have comforted her. But now, he had important matters to attend to. Moreover, he was entangled with a peach blossom. Naturally, he would not casually provoke such a good girl. Seeing him leave just like that without even leaving behind a word, the servant girl Shui Yin, who was hiding in the shadows, couldn't help but pout. She thought to herself, "Second Master Bao is really too cold. To think that my miss would be sad and shed tears for him." Song Qingshu naturally did not know about all this. He went to the West City Gate and met up with the crowd. The Jia residents had sent a few guards who were highly skilled to travel with him. In addition, his manservant Ming Yin was also there to serve him along the way. Shiren and the other servant girls wanted to go, but were rejected by the Jia family's mother. After all, Jia Baoyu was going to participate in the matchmaking contest. It was not good to bring a few servant girls with him. Moreover, they were not the only family accompanying him. They could not let others see them as a joke. Song Qingshu was naturally very happy about this. The person in the mansion who was most familiar with Jia Baoyu was probably Shiren. If she accompanied him all the time, there might be some mistakes. Although the servant Ming Yin was also by his side, his relationship with her was much worse than Shiren's. As for those guards, Song Qingshu pursed his lips. They were more than enough to deal with ordinary thieves and rascals. However, if they were to encounter a true expert, they would not be enough. It seemed that the Jia residents had indeed suffered heavy losses in the Battle of Wudong. If it was really Jia Baoyu, then he could only count on the Central Plains' one red dot. He did not show himself, but Song Qingshu knew that he was secretly following nearby. If anything happened, he should be able to appear in time. Not long after, he arrived at the West City Gate. A group of young masters had already gathered there. He recognized some of them and didn't know some of them, but he guessed that they were all princes and grandsons of the imperial court with good family backgrounds. Baoyu, an amiable voice called out to him. Very quickly, someone put their arm around his shoulder and hugged him. Song Qingshu raised an eyebrow. Brother Shui. He'd already recognized the other party. It was the young master of the Shui family, Shui Pan, also known as local bully. Shui Baochai was extremely beautiful. As her brother, Shui Pan was naturally good-looking. Those who didn't know him would think that he was a handsome young master at first sight, but those who knew him would call him local bully. However, Song Qingshu was a little surprised. Although this person was a little useless, he treated his friends well. Song Qingshu could feel his sincerity and enthusiasm from his tone. He didn't become snobbish just because his family had fallen. In stark contrast to him were the two brothers of the LV family. It should be noted that the LV family had almost been raised by Jia Sherdao. To some extent, LV Wendy and LV Wenhuan could be regarded as Jia Sherdao's disciples. Their nephews, LV Sherdao and LV Shisheng, had more or less flattered Jia Baoyu when they saw him. But today, the two of them avoided him as if he was the plague. They just casually cupped their hands as a greeting. At that moment, LV Sherdao and LV Shisheng were also very uncomfortable. Others might not know the situation of Wudong Mountain, but they certainly knew. Thinking that the miserable situation of the LV family was caused by the Jia family, they didn't look good when they saw Jia Baoyu. Besides, the family had already decided to leave the southern Song dynasty and join the western Xia dynasty or the Mongols. Naturally, they wouldn't spend so much effort to build a relationship with the young masters of the southern Song dynasty. Song Qingshu looked around and couldn't help but ask, "Is everyone here? Why aren't we leaving yet?" At that moment, a soft and pleasant voice sounded, "We are still waiting for the last young master." Song Qingshu's eyes lit up. Today, Shui Baochai wasn't wearing women's clothes. Instead, she was wearing the official uniform of the Imperial City Department. Her red lips and white teeth made her look even more handsome. Many young masters from the aristocratic families kept glancing at her, thinking, what a handsome young man. Shui Baochai's identity was only known by the top few families. No one else knew that this handsome guard was the young lady of the Shui family. Shui Pan, who was standing at the side, wanted to put his arm around his sister's shoulder and said to Song Qingshu with a smile, "Brother, my sister will protect you along the way." Shui Baochai leaned to the side and dodged his hand without leaving a trace. She snorted softly, "Don't expose my identity by calling me a girl in front of so many people. Remember to call me Master Tiandi in the future." Shui Pan smiled embarrassedly. All right. For some reason, he didn't know why he was a little afraid of this seemingly gentle girl since he was young. Song Qingshu looked at Shui Baochai in surprise. He didn't expect her to be promoted again. The head of the Imperial City Department was called the Tiandi Imperial City Department, followed by the 6th Tiandi Imperial City Department. Shui Baochai could be said to be second only to one person in the Imperial City Department. Who are you waiting for? Why are you so arrogant? Jiao Baoyu was a top-notch playboy, so Song Qingshu didn't need to be too polite. People from the Tianbuiyang Mansion, Shui Baochai said with a strange expression. Tianbuiyang Mansion? Song Qingshu was startled. In his plan, the Yang Mansion didn't include anyone from the Yang family. More importantly, were there any men of suitable age in the Tianbuiyang Mansion? At this moment, the sound of hooves could be heard. A handsome young man was riding on the back of the horse. He was dressed in a loose robe and had an elegant expression on his face. Sorry to have kept you waiting. The young man got off the horse and cupped his hands. Although he was apologizing, his tone was extremely indifferent. Many people were originally quite dissatisfied, but seeing how handsome the young man was, they didn't say anything. Many people even went up to him to strike up a conversation. It should be known that in this era, the aristocratic circle was more or less interested in men. Many people would keep handsome manservants at home. One of the main reasons why Shui Pan was called local bully was because he had taken a fancy to a handsome young man. He tried to flirt with him, but failed. Instead, he was beaten up by the other party and became a laughing stock in the capital. It was a pity that the young man led the horse to the side and didn't give them a chance to approach him, so they returned to the group. At this time, they were at the gates of the capital, so it wasn't good for them to cause trouble. Song Qingshu finally understood why Shui Baochai's expression was so strange. Just as he was about to say something, Shui Pan couldn't help but sigh. There's actually such a handsome man in the world. Baoyu, I used to think that you were the most handsome man I've ever seen, but compared to him today, you're still slightly inferior. Song Qingshu was speechless. Noticing Shui Pan's hand on his shoulder, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch, and he subconsciously moved to the side. Chapter 2087. Seeing that everyone had arrived, an official from the Ministry of Rites came out to give a speech, including the things to take note of along the way. The young masters were not in the mood to listen, and soon impatiently urged them to hurry up. The official did not get angry, as this was all within his expectations. He meticulously read out everything before giving the order to set off. The procession set off in a grandiose manner. Shui Pan could not help but approach the handsome young master. "Brother, how should I address you? You look a little familiar. Have we met before?" Song Qingshu thought, it's not strange that you find him familiar. This handsome young master is the yellow-robed girl disguised as a man. As a princess and a member of the Jinshan Academy, a top young master like Shui Pan would have most likely seen her before. However, the yellow-robed girl had always lived in seclusion and rarely showed her face in public. Therefore, unless one was very familiar with her, they would not be able to recognize her even if she looked familiar. "I've never seen you before." The yellow-robed girl was very cold and did not even look at Shui Pan. Shui Pan did not mind and continued to ask, "Which branch of the Tianbuiyang estate are you from?" "The Yang estate has very few male descendants. Logically speaking, I should have heard of you." "That's none of your business." The yellow-robed girl pulled on the reins and increased the distance between them. Her entire body seemed to be enveloped in ice, exuding an unapproachable aura. "You have character. I like it. Not only was Shui Pan not angry, but he instead became even more interested. Just as he was about to catch up to her, Shui Baochai pulled him back with a dark expression. "Why are you stopping me?" Shui Pan was a little dissatisfied. Shui Baochai snorted. "Don't provoke her, or I won't be able to protect you." Shui Pan looked puzzled. The Yang estate of Tianbua has long since declined. Now that our father is a high official, why should we be afraid of the Yang clan? In short, there are many things that I can't explain to you. Seeing that he was still unwilling, Shui Baochai could only say, "Her martial arts is very high and she's in a bad mood. Have you forgotten that you were beaten up by Lu Xianglian?" Shui Pan's breathing stopped. He could not help but feel a chill down his spine when he thought of the tragic situation back then. If he was beaten up in front of so many young masters, how would he be able to face others in the future? He could only give up on this idea for now. Song Qingshu seized the opportunity to ask, "Big Sister Bao, there doesn't seem to be anyone from the Yang family on the list to go to Western Xia this time. Why is she here?" Shui Baochai deliberated over her words and said, "She joined us temporarily, and her identity is rather special. No one dares to stop her, and Zai Fu and the others feel that with her accompanying you, she can also protect you." So they acquiesced. Shui Pan shivered. Is he really that powerful? Song Qingshu had a pensive look on his face. With the yellow-robed girl's martial arts, she was indeed competent enough to protect these people. But the key point was, didn't she tell me that she was going to go into closed-door training last time? Why did she suddenly want to go to the Western Xia this time? "Bao, you are being unreasonable here," Shui Pan suddenly said. "Huh?" Song Qingshu was confused. "You're clearly mocking me after seeing me suffer a setback," Shui Pan said unhappily. "You're overthinking things." Song Qingshu hadn't expected local bully to be such an actor. "Of course I am," Shui Pan said angrily. "No, you should go and try to strike up a conversation with him. Only then will I be able to vent my anger." "You shouldn't be thinking like that." Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a little amused. "What if I go and strike up a conversation with him?" Shui Pan laughed foolishly. "That's impossible." Jia Baoyu's body reeked of makeup, so only women would look at him differently. In the eyes of men, he was definitely not as popular as a masculine man like him. Moreover, he had just experienced that handsome young master's cold demeanor. Many people had already suffered at his hands, and his mood was visibly bad. Wouldn't he be asking for a rebuff if he went over now? "I'll go and try." Song Qingshu had originally wanted to ask the yellow-robed girl why she was going to the Western Xia. Now, he had found an excuse to go over. The yellow-robed girl lagged behind the group, and there was no one within a 1-meter radius. It was as if there was an invisible domain around her that kept people at a distance of 1,000 miles. "Get lost." Noticing that Song Qingshu had gone over, the yellow-robed woman coldly glared at him. Originally, with her self-restraint, she would not have been so rude, but she was in a bad mood, and there was also a large group of crazy bees and butterflies that kept coming to bother her. If it was anyone else, she would just chase them away, but when it came to Jia Baoyu, thinking that all of this was caused by Jia Shidao's rebellion, she looked at the traitor in front of her and naturally couldn't help but feel angry. Shui Pan, who was far away, faintly heard the words, "Get lost," and almost laughed out loud. He instantly felt much better. Song Qingshu didn't mind. He smiled and asked, "Why are you so angry, little sister? Is there something bothering you?" "Little sister?" The yellow-robed girl couldn't help but frown when she heard his strange name. "You can tell that I'm a woman disguised as a man." She often traveled in Jianghu, so she was very familiar with disguising as a man. In addition, she usually lived in the capital, so none of the people just now saw through her disguise. Song Qingshu said, "I've been around women for a long time, so I'm very sensitive to the differences between men and women. You smell different from those stinky men." The yellow-robed girl looked at him and said, "Your tone and expression are very similar to a friend of mine." "Oh." Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows and said proudly, "You must have a good relationship with this friend, right? It seems that I've taken advantage of you." "No, you're as annoying as he is," the yellow-robed girl said coldly. Song Qing didn't expect this development at all. He couldn't help but ask, "Did you go to the Western Xia thousands of miles away because of that friend?" "It's none of your business," the yellow-robed girl said coldly and rode to the other side. She whispered to herself, "I just took it as going out for a walk." Song Qing had sharp ears and eyes. When he heard what she said, he roughly guessed what was going on. Most likely, she wanted to avoid him, so she left Lin in for Xixia. But fate played tricks on people like this. She just happened to be closer to him. Seeing that Song Qing came back, Shui Pan opened his mouth wide and said, "You could talk with him for so long. How did you do that?" Noticing that many people were looking at them, Song Qing didn't want to cause more trouble, so he shrugged and said, "I was driven away by him in the end." The people around him were relieved. They hurried all the way to the west. One day, they suddenly came to a town and found it was very lively with lanterns and streamers. A busybody couldn't help but ask a local, "What happened here? Why is it so lively?" "Miss Hua, the Red Sleeves house, will choose her guest today. Aren't we going to join in the fun?" "Miss Hua, she's the top courtesan of the Red Sleeves house. Everyone knows that she's an outstanding beauty. Of course, we all want to see her." Hearing the discussion, Shui Pan beamed with joy as he ran over to discuss this matter with Song Qing and invited him to join the fun. Top courtesan? Song Qing frowned. He was not interested in these things now. "You come from Linen. What kind of beauty have you not seen? How beautiful can the top courtesan of this small place be? I won't go." Chapter 2088. You probably don't understand. Since ancient times, there have been many beauties in the countryside. Even though this place is a bit remote, what if there really is an outstanding beauty? There's no harm in taking a look. Shui Pan's tone was filled with excitement. Not interested. The current Song Qing wouldn't be interested in the courtesan of a brothel. "Let's go. I've been bored out of my mind." Shui Pan tried to pull him, but how could he move? Shui Pan suddenly said, "This isn't like you. In the past, when you heard of such an interesting woman, you would definitely go for her immediately." Song Qing's heart skipped a beat. He had unintentionally revealed his true emotions and forgot about Jia Baiyu's instinctive reaction in this kind of environment. Fortunately, the other young masters were all rushing towards the bustling area. The officials from the Ministry of Rites couldn't stop them and could only follow helplessly. Song Qing took advantage of the situation and followed the others. Since it was the courtesan of the House of Red Sleeves, the most bustling place would be the House of Red Sleeves. However, even though there was a sea of people outside, the House of Red Sleeves was expensive and this was a remote town. Thus, ordinary people couldn't afford it and could only watch from the outside. Even though the group of young masters arrived late, they were all of high status and had many guards under them. Soon, they squeezed through the crowd and entered the House of Red Sleeves. Even though there weren't as many people as outside, the House of Red Sleeves was basically full. Of course, this couldn't stop the group of young masters. With money and their subordinates, a few tables were quickly emptied. Before Song Qing could say anything, Shui Pan had already sent someone to clear out a table at the front. "Baoyu, come and sit with us." He pulled Song Qing over and sat down. Shui Baochai frowned and glared at her brother. "You're messing around here again. If father finds out, he'll beat you to death." Shui Pan curled his lips. "You don't need to use father to pressure me. We've been traveling for so long. What's wrong with coming here to rest? Moreover, those people are coming. It's not good for us to act alone." Shui Baochai stomped her feet angrily when she heard his eloquent words. She had no choice but to turn around and warn Song Qing, "Baoyu, don't be led astray by him. This place." She opened her mouth, but did not know how to explain. "Don't worry, I'm just looking around. I won't do anything." Song Qing smiled. Since he was already here, he might as well watch the fun. While sipping his tea, he looked around and soon shook his head. This was not a brothel branch set up by He Tai's Ho. Song Qing did not know who the boss behind the scenes was. He had actually built such a magnificent place in this remote town. Was it really not a loss? Suddenly, the tip of his nose smelled a delicate fragrance that was so simple and elegant that it was almost negligible. If it weren't for his outstanding sixth senses, he probably wouldn't have been able to smell it. Subconsciously turning his head to look, he found that the yellow-robed woman was also sitting at this table. She's also interested in Oiran. Song Qing-shu was a little amused. There were 4 people sitting at this table, but 2 of them were women dressed as men, and 1 was a fake. Perhaps only Shui Pan had the intention of chasing after women. In the House of Red Sleeves, some gorgeously dressed girls came out to perform. However, no one bought it and they all shouted, "We're not here to watch this. Oiran, come out. Miss Hua, I've admired you for a long time. Miss Yuyin, come out quickly and let us see your beautiful face." Hearing the continuous howls around him, Song Qing-shu was dumbfounded. At first, when he heard people calling him Miss Hua, he thought that the devil had entered the village. There was also someone calling for Yuyin. After a long time, he found out that the name of Oiran was Hua Yuyin and not Yuyin. At this moment, Shui Pan was also shouting along with everyone. Shui Baochai, who was at the side, couldn't help but move to the side, afraid that others would know about their relationship and feel embarrassed. She turned to look at Song Qing-shu and saw that his expression was normal and his eyes were clear. She couldn't help but secretly let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Baochai wasn't like other men. At this moment, a beautiful figure walked out from the second floor, instantly attracting the gazes of all the men present. The girl was petite and beautiful. Her jet black hair hung behind her shoulders. She had an exquisite figure and snow-white skin. She smiled sweetly at the crowd, revealing her pearly white teeth. She was extremely enchanting. What left a deep impression was that when she looked around with her beautiful eyes, she had a romantic attitude. She was charming but not vulgar, emitting an incomparable charm. Song Qing-shu was a little surprised. How could such a beautiful girl exist in such a remote town? Although she wasn't the unparalleled beauty that people claimed, she was still an outstanding beauty. Soon, waves of regretful sighs sounded in the surroundings. It turned out that Hua Kuei had only taken a glimpse of her before returning to the door curtain. They could only vaguely see the outline of her figure. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. She came out to let everyone inspect the goods first, so that these men would be willing to pay for it later. As expected, very soon, a young girl dressed like a servant girl walked out. She smiled sweetly and bowed to everyone, then continued, "Our young miss is only one person and can't split herself into 2. If we were to receive everyone, I'm afraid that it would be inconsiderate to all the young masters and masters. Therefore, we can only choose a few to meet. Please forgive us." Song Qing-shu curled his lips. It sounded so nice, but it was all just a routine. That's natural. Miss Yuyin's body is delicate. How could she be tainted by vulgar things? This was a typical bootlicker. Just say it. How are we going to choose people? Master, I have plenty of money. As he spoke, he took out a bag of silver and slammed it on the table. The young masters from Lin and secretly curled their lips and said, "Nouveau riche, disgraceful." They were all from aristocratic families, so they naturally looked down on this kind of people. The little servant girl pursed her lips and smiled. Our young miss said that she wants to find a good man to entrust her to, but after all, the contact time is too short to really understand a person. Therefore, we have to set up 2 tests to choose the fated person. Those who pass the 2 tests can come to the room and be personally received by our young miss. Although she said it vaguely, all the people present were experienced and had long been used to these tricks. Naturally, they understood that the young miss's personal reception was the 3rd test. At the level of Hua Kuei, she also had the right to choose guests. At that time, she would definitely choose someone who was pleasing to the eye as the guest behind the curtain. Which 2 tests are it? Tell us quickly. We are so anxious. The little servant girl replied softly. As the saying goes, a talented man and a beautiful woman. Naturally, it is to test your talents. Of course, this is divided into 2 types. One is wealth, and the other is literary talent. Both of these can prove your strength to a certain extent, so that our young miss won't entrust her to the wrong person. Very soon, everyone understood the rules. To pass the first test, they had to pay 500 taels of silver as an admission ticket. Although the Southern Song dynasty was rich, an ordinary family would hesitate to spend 500 taels of silver on a brothel. Moreover, it was only an admission ticket. Therefore, this test directly eliminated half of the people. However, this was naturally not a problem for Song Qing-shu and his group. These people were all from rich and noble families. A mere 500 taels of silver was nothing to them. Before Song Qing-shu could speak, Xue Pan directly waved his hand and paid the money for him. The Xue family was born as a royal merchant and was an existence that was originally the wealthiest in the world. He even paid the money for the yellow-robed girl in order to curry favor with her. The yellow-robed girl raised her eyebrows as if she was about to explode, but in the end, she did not say anything. Seeing that the other party was unexpectedly not angry, Xue Pan smiled foolishly, feeling that the money he spent was worth it. On the side, Song Qing-shu suddenly became very suspicious of Xue Pan's sexual orientation and considered whether or not he should stay away from him. Seeing them flirt with each other, Xue Baochai was extremely angry and simply spent 500 taels of silver to buy an admission ticket. At this time, the little servant girl spoke again. Perhaps it was because she had received a lot of money, but her smile was also a little sweeter than before. Next is the second test. May the young master who's just passed use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is the topic. You can write a poem or a song and let our young miss judge. Chapter 2089. Hearing this question, the crowd applauded. The Song dynasty was a prosperous literary style. Even if the average person was not very talented, he had a broad vision and could tell that the title of top courtesan was unique. The group of childs from the capital city began to think hard. Although many of them were playboys, they were influenced by what they saw and heard in Lin, and a place where scholars gathered. What's more, these people often wandered around the red light district. Many brothels chased after literary talents. They all had experience in similar things. I got it. A playboy stood up excitedly and handed the poem to the servant girl. Soon, the servant girl opened the paper and read, "Go 2 or 3 miles, 4 or 5 houses, 6 or 7 pavilions, and 80 or 90 flowers." Good. Not expecting someone to write it so quickly, the crowd applauded. The playboy cupped his hands and looked at the beautiful figure behind the curtain from time to time, feeling very proud. This bastard. The girl in yellow suddenly cursed. Song Qing-shu was stunned and couldn't help saying, "I think the poem is quite good." The girl in yellow snorted and ignored him. Xue Baochai explained to him with a red face, "Bao Yu, Uncle used to urge you to read more books. This poem was written by our dynasty's poet Xiao Yong. He, Zhou Dunyi, Zhang Zai, Cheng Hao, and Cheng Yi are known as the 5 scholars of the Northern Song dynasty. They are famous Confucian scholars." "Is that so?" "Huh." Song Qing-shu couldn't help blushing. No wonder the girl in yellow was angry. Xiao Yong was a sage of the Jianshan Academy, but this person used his poem to compete with him in a brothel. It was a disgrace to literature. But judging from the excitement of the crowd, it seemed that only a few people knew the origin of the poem. They were indeed a group of playboys who only knew how to eat, drink, and have fun. Thinking of being looked down upon by the girl in yellow and Xue Baochai, Song Qing-shu felt lucky that he was using the identity of Jia Baoyu. Otherwise, he would have lost a lot of face. At this time, Xue Pan came to Xue Baochai and said, "Good sister, help me write a poem. You know, I can fight, but writing poems is too difficult for me." Previously, when he was in Linen, he had hired a group of idlers to deal with such situations in the brothels. But this time, it was impossible for him to bring those gunmen with him to Western Xia. So, when he encountered such a problem, he was dumbfounded. Xue Baochai snorted, "What a scandal! I won't help." Song Qing-shu chuckled inwardly. With Xue Baochai's personality, how could her younger sister help her brother chase a prostitute in a brothel? Got it. At this moment, Lu Sherdao threw away the brush in his hand and handed over the finished paper. The maid took it and showed it to Hua Kuei. Then, she read it out loud. After parting, the 2 worlds are hanging by a thread. He only said it would be March or April. Who knew if it would be 5 or 6 years? The 7-string zither has no heart to play, and the 8-line script cannot be passed down. The 9 chains broke in the middle, and the 10-leaf pavilion anxiously awaited. 100 thoughts, 1,000 thoughts, helplessness, resentment. All right, there was another round of applause. For a moment, it was hard to tell which one was better, this one or the one just now. But this one had more words, so it was probably better. The key was that it also described the lovesickness between a man and a woman, which seemed to be more appropriate in this situation. Lou Shershing smiled and stood up. I also have one. Someone had already sent it to the back of the bead curtain. The maid quickly read it out. Thousands of words can't be finished. Bored to death, I lean on the railing. In the 9th month, I climb high to look at the lone goose. In the autumn of the 8th month, the moon is round and the man is not round. In the middle of the 7th month, I burn incense and ask the heaven. In the dog days of the 6th month, everyone waves their fans and my heart is cold. In the 5th month, the pomegranate is as red as fire, but there's a cold rain to water the flowers. In the 4th month, the loquats are not yellow yet, and my heart is confused when I look at the mirror. In the 3rd month, the peach blossoms turn with the water. Drifting, the string of the kite is broken in February. Ah, my husband, I can't wait for you to be a woman and I to be a man in the next life. Well, this one has more words. Child Liu and Lu are really talented. The 2 brothers really have it easy. As long as one comes up with something, the other can compare it with the other one. This time, Song Qin-shu didn't dare to rashly applaud. His first reaction was to look at the yellow-robed woman and Xue Baochai. As usual, the yellow-robed woman ignored him. Xue Baochai couldn't help but burst into laughter when she saw his impatient expression. This is Zhuo Wenjun's poem of the resentful lover. Although it wasn't written by them, it's quite appropriate to use it to express their love for that top courtesan. Xue Pan couldn't help but curse. Tui, who do you think you are? How can you be so insincere when visiting a prostitute? Xue Baochai's smile froze when she heard his vulgar words. The yellow-robed woman also looked at him with disdain. Song Qin-shu, on the other hand, felt that his honesty was somewhat adorable. Xue Pan didn't deliberately lower his voice, so the Liu brothers in the distance heard him as well. Their faces darkened as they stood up and cupped their hands towards him. I've heard that young Master Xue is a talented man. I wonder if you can write an essay to broaden our horizons? As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of snickering could be heard. How could they, who were all from Lin, not know local bullies level? Xue Pan couldn't help but blush as he was surrounded by so many people. He could even faintly sense that the top courtesan was staring at him. Xue Baochai frowned and took out a piece of paper. Young Master Xue's essay is ready. She naturally didn't want to help her brother pick up girls, but she also didn't want to embarrass the Xue family. Thus, after a moment of hesitation, she decided to help her brother. The servant girl took the paper and began to recite. The moon is 8 times round on the 19th day. 6 of the 7 scholars are insane. At the 5th hour, the rooster is drummed 3 times. Xue Baochai couldn't do anything about it. Everyone was well aware of her brother's terrible personality. If he used overly genteel words, everyone would know that he wasn't the one who wrote it. Thus, he chose to use this kind of limerick, which was more in line with his style. Xue Pan immediately swept away his dejection and began to applaud himself. Good! The others secretly despised him, and there was only sparse applause. However, Xue Pan didn't care about it at all. He cupped his hands and bowed to everyone, saying, "You flatter me." Xue Baochai covered her eyes with her hands, feeling so embarrassed. 1 big qiao, 2 small qiao, 3 inches golden lotus for inches waist. 5, 6, 7, make up 80 or 90% delicate. Soon, someone else did it. Although the meaning was a bit vulgar, it was praised by many men in a brothel. At that moment, L.V. Shershing suddenly said, "I wonder what young Master Jia has done?" Hearing his words, the group of people all looked at Song Qin-shu with complicated expressions. A few months ago, Jia Baoyu was definitely the leader of the group of young masters, and no one dared to offend him. But now that Jia Sherdao was dead and the Jia family was in decline, they naturally had no scruples. Thinking of how they had flattered him in the past, they were all very unhappy, and they were happy to see him make a fool of himself. Song Qingshu smiled and didn't take it to heart. He casually wrote something and handed it over. Not only Shui Baochai, but even the girl in the yellow dress also looked at it curiously. But when they saw what he wrote, the two girls' expressions became very strange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 23, 34. The girl in the yellow dress looked even more disdainful, but Shui Baochai felt even more embarrassed than when her brother made a fool of himself. She thought she would really urge Bao Yu to study more when she had time. Song Qingshu didn't care. He wasn't interested in being the top courtesan, anyway. Besides, it was Jia Baoyu who was embarrassed, so what did it have to do with Song Qingshu? After the maidservant took the bead curtain, a snicker sounded from inside. It was obvious that Hua Kuei was also amused. Song Qingshu shrugged and took a sip of tea indifferently, waiting to be eliminated. Unexpectedly, a beautiful voice came from inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 80, 90. Thousands, tens of thousands, countless pieces fly into the plum blossom and never disappear. This poem is really unique. Young Master Jia, you are so talented. Song Qingshu almost spat out the tea in his mouth, and Shui Baochai and the girl in the yellow dress looked at him with extremely strange eyes. Chapter 2090. Shui Baochai couldn't help but ask doubtfully, Bao Yu, do you know the Hua Kuei? The yellow-robed girl pretended not to care, but in fact, she was also secretly listening. Song Qingshu shook his head blankly. I don't know her. He recalled that he had never seen this Hua Kuei before, whether it was his original identity or the other identities he had disguised. He was very confident in his memory, and he wasn't a scumbag like Duan Zhengshan. When he saw Yi Ernyang at the Shaolin Temple Assembly, he wasn't even sure if he had a relationship with her before. Then why did she help you? Shui Baochai's face was full of doubt. One had to know that the poem written by Hua Kuei was nonsense, but it was casually changed by that Hua Kuei and became a good poem. Maybe because she thinks I'm handsome? Song Qingshu shrugged, as if saying that he didn't want to do this either. Shui Pan laughed and hugged his shoulder, saying, Bao Yu, long time no see. I find that you're becoming more and more shameless. You're almost catching up to me. Shui Baochai rolled her eyes, too lazy to pay attention to these two weirdos. Is there anything else that young master has written? The servant girl glanced around and asked. The crowd immediately quieted down. Although the Song dynasty was prosperous, how could there be so many literary experts in a remote town? Even in Lin City, there might not be many scholars who could compose a suitable poem in a short period of time. Just when everyone thought it was over, Shui Baochai stood up. I happen to have one here. Song Qingshu and Shui Pan, who were sitting at the same table, were both stunned. Shui Pan even whispered, Are you crazy? Shui Baochai snorted and said discontentedly, What? You can go, but I can't? Aren't you messing around? We're men, and you're a woman. How can this be the same? Shui Pan was really anxious and worried for his sister's reputation. It's inappropriate for a girl like you to go to such a place. Shui Baochai shook her head. Anyway, no one knows that I'm a woman. Do you really have to shout and let everyone know? Hearing her words, Shui Pan didn't dare to say anything else for fear of being overheard. At this time, the maidservant took Shui Baochai's paper and read, Lower the bead curtain, burn the incense, go to the divination, ask the heaven, whose family Nong's daughter will fall into, hate Wang Lang for not speaking the truth. Unable to stop, I will suppress it with my mouth. When it came to writing, their friendship was not bad, but it was hard to say a word of innocence. They were clearly a good pair of Mandarin ducks, but they were cut off by a knife, and the slave who was thrown to the ground was exhausted and tired. If you think about it carefully, both your words and your heart are fake. Song Qingshu glanced at Shui Baochai in surprise. Her poem is so graceful and full of hidden bitterness. Maybe someone can tell that she is a woman disguised as a man. As soon as the song was played, the audience was silent for a moment. Soon, someone raised a question. This article doesn't seem to have been written according to the requirements, right? Yeah, how can it be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9? In the face of the crowd's accusations, Shweb Baochai curled her lips and looked as if she didn't care to explain. Song Qingshu thought about it and decided to help her. If he let her explain it herself, it would be too embarrassing. Ahem, what do you know? This is the integration of numbers into the poem in the form of guessing words. For example, lower the bead curtain, burn the incense, go to the divination, it is 1. Ask the heaven whose family gnome's daughter will fall into, go to the divination, it is 2, and so on. Hearing his explanation, everyone suddenly understood and praised Shweb Baochai's brilliant poem. Shweb Baochai looked at Song Qingshu with some surprise. She thought that Baoyu was really smart. It seemed that he just didn't like to read before. The girl in yellow couldn't help but stare at him a few times. Song Qingshu smiled and thought that although he was not familiar with these ancient poems, he had played this kind of guessing game in his later life. Young master is really talented. The maidservant stared at Shweb Baochai and praised. Obviously, Shweb Baochai's handsomeness made the little girl a little confused. After a long time, she withdrew her gaze and looked at the crowd with a blushing face. Is there anyone else? Since it's like this, I will also imitate it. The girl in yellow said lightly. Song Qingshu couldn't help but look sideways. He thought that even she was involved. If these two women finally won the top courtesan, how would these women end up in bed? Soon, the maidservant read out the poem written by the girl in yellow. Come downstairs, the money is divined. Ask the heaven, where is the person? Hate the royal grandson, go all the way. Hate the enemy, go all the way. Regret in the past, I made a mistake, there is no friend below. Is there need to ask? Separate without a knife. From now on, do not rely on the enemy. 1,000 kinds of lovesickness are written off. She used a similar technique to Shweb Baochai. Just now, the confusion was solved. This time, the people around understood. However, Song Qingshu couldn't help but look at the girl in yellow. Why did it feel like she was describing what happened between them? Were they really going to become enemies? The maidservant's eyes lit up. Obviously, the girl in yellow's handsomeness had left a deep impression on her. Young master is really talented. After that, the House of Red Sleeves tabulated the number of people who passed the first 2 rounds and invited them to the second floor. Shui Pan looked around excitedly. In comparison, Song Qingshu was much calmer. Shui Baochai, who was beside him, had a solemn expression. No one knew what she was thinking, and she was secretly observing the surroundings. The girl in yellow still had a cold expression, as if nothing could arouse her interest. However, it made sense. With her martial arts, even if there was any danger in this remote town, it wouldn't be able to hurt her. Very quickly, they were led into an elegant room. The room was quite spacious, and even with nearly 10 people sitting inside, it did not feel crowded at all. Very quickly, a slim and beautiful figure slowly walked out from behind the screen. Sorry for making you wait for so long. Yi Yin is impolite. Master Hua is too polite. Miss Yi Yin is too kind. I didn't think so just now, but now that I've seen you up close, you're truly a stunning beauty. Isn't that obvious? I already thought that Miss Yi Yin was devastatingly beautiful. The group was unusually excited. Among them, Shui Pan was the most active. The Liu brothers barely managed to keep their composure. After all, they had seen Huang Rong and Guofu often in Xiangyang and had a certain level of composure. The ones who were the calmest were Song Qingshu, the girl in yellow, and Shui Baochai. The other two were women and naturally wouldn't be blinded by lust. Song Qingshu's current vision and composure were naturally far beyond that of an ordinary person. The girl's beauty didn't cause any ripples in his heart. Instead, he thought to himself, this Hua Kuei seems to know martial arts, and it's not a weak one at that. Interesting. Hua Yin took in everyone's reactions and smiled. Lu, serve the tea. Yes. The pretty maidservant at the side began to serve tea to everyone. Shui Pan instinctively replied, we're already here. How can we be in the mood to drink tea? Miss Yin, quickly tell us how to compete in the third round. Chapter 2091. Hua Yin smiled and said, Young master, don't be anxious. There are too many people before me. I have no choice but to test you. I'm very scared. Now let me play a song for you to express my apology. I hope you can forgive me. Okay, let's enjoy Master Hua's zither skills. Led by Lu Shidao, the crowd cheered and kept praising each other. Song Qing Shu's heart skipped a beat. This Wakue really understood people's hearts. Although everyone had gone through the tests in order to see her previously, and no one had said anything, which one of the people present was not a figure that everyone revolved around. Why did they have to take the test so humbly for a girl from a brothel? It would be fine if they could win the beauty in the end. But if they returned without any achievement, they would explode when they remembered how they were played by a girl from a brothel. Now that she offered to play and perform for these people, it could be considered as giving them some benefits. This way, even if they were rejected, they would be more open about it. Soon, Hua Yin plucked the strings with her 10 fingers, and a sound of nature slowly sounded in the room. At first, the sound was light, like the gurgling of a spring on a mountain. But gradually, it became dense like the drizzle in early spring. Listening carefully, the sound of the zither seemed to have a strange magic power. The music seemed to be hovering above one's head and whispering in one's ear, making one intoxicated. Blowing away the smoke into the night wind. A bright moon hangs on the curtain. Because the road is far, the person is far. Even if our hearts sleep together, we are not together. Love is tender and deep. Blue clouds return without a trace. Only like in the previous life, love separates the mandarin ducks. Hua Yin's red lips moved slightly, as if she was sighing and narrating. Her sweet voice was gentle and mellow, making everyone in the room intoxicated. This was Lu Yong's poem, Partridge Sky, blowing away the smoke into the night wind. Lu Yong was also an extraordinary person. Because he accidentally offended the emperor of the Jin sect, he was never hired. He had no choice but to wander around the brothel. Because his poem was so good, he was welcomed by the brothel girls everywhere he went. It was said that when he died in his old age, no one buried him because his family was poor. It was a group of brothel girls who pooled money to take care of his funeral. On that day, countless girls shed tears. Hua Yin was singing his lyrics at this time. It was really sad and moving, adding some extra charm. On the side, Shui Baochai frowned slightly. She was a famous, talented woman, and she was proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. In her opinion, the other party's zither skills were not high enough to be looked up to, but for some reason, the music played by the other party seemed to have a special magic that tugged at the heartstrings of people. The yellow-robed woman also looked at her thoughtfully. It was clear that she was also thinking about this problem. Song Qing Shu was probably the only one who knew the truth, because he could sense that the other party had mixed in her playing the zither. This was an extremely brilliant sound wave technique. Although it did not have much lethality, in this kind of enchanting atmosphere, it was the easiest to stir up a man's emotions. As for the others, they were completely immersed in it. They were just short of looking like pigs. At the end of the song, Shui Pan was the first to jump out and applaud. It's too good. Awesome. Everyone frowned, thinking that local bully really was local bully. He was so uncultured that he only knew how to say awesome. Shui Baochai looked like she did not know him at all. Hua Yin did not look down on him. Instead, she replied softly, "Thank you for your praise, young master." Hearing her response, Shui Pan was so happy that he danced with joy. Lu Shidao looked at him disdainfully and put away his fan, saying, "This song should only be heard in the heavens. How many times can it be heard in the mortal world?" Master Hua has really opened my eyes today. I've never heard such moving zither music. Young Master Lu, you're wrong. Is Miss Hua's singing not moving other than the sound of the zither? In my opinion, Miss Hua's singing is even more outstanding. Yes. I can't understand the description, lingering for 3 days, not knowing the taste of meat for 3 months. Today, I finally understand the feelings of the ancients. A group of people tried to flatter Hua Yuyin in various ways, making her tremble with laughter. Shui Pan also realized how clumsy his performance was. Seeing how eloquent those people were, he could not help but give up. Bah, what are you trying to show off for? But Miss Yin really did play well. Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. He had listened to all kinds of popular and classical music in his later life, and all kinds of musical instruments and post-processing software. To him, the sound of the ancient zither was too bland. Hua Yin was clearly not looking at him, but she seemed to have noticed his expression. She could not help but say, "Young Master Jia, you're smiling. Is it because my zither skills are unbearable?" When they were outside, everyone had already announced their names. She must have an amazing memory to remember everyone's name in such a short time. I wouldn't dare. Song Qing-shu cupped his hands casually. Hua Yin was waiting for him to continue, but he did not say anything. Her smile could not help but freeze on her face. At this moment, someone mocked, "Don't make blind comments if you don't know anything." Are you trying to attract attention with this kind of claptrap? Master Hua, your methods are too clumsy. Song Qing-shu thought to himself. Who did I offend? I didn't even say anything, but I'm being targeted. Thinking of this, he could not help but look at that Hua Kuei. He found that she was looking at him with a faint smile. It was obvious that she was trying to draw the attention to him. Don't say that. Young Master Jia was born in a scholarly family. He is naturally proficient in the 4 arts. Lu Shidao stood up and said with a smile. Shui Pan wanted to show his face in front of the Hua Kuei. When he heard this, he looked like he was basking in the light. Of course, my brother is the most famous scholar in the capital. Scholar? The people from the capital all had strange expressions on their faces. If Jia Baoyu was considered a scholar, then wouldn't they all be the top scholars? Shui Baochai could not help but curse. Why is Big Brother so? She knew Jia Baoyu very well. How could she not know how good Jia Baoyu was? It was already not bad that he could play the zither. How could he compare to the Hua Kuei who relied on it to make a living? The other party was clearly trying to push him to a higher level so that he would fall even more miserably. However, her brother was still foolishly moving forward. She really did not know what to say. She did not want to embarrass Jia Baoyu, nor did she want the Shui family to be a joke. Shui Baochai coughed slightly and said, I know that young Master Jia is good at the zither. There is no need for him to fight such a small scene. I have been defeated by young Master Jia, so let me fight for him. Song Qing-shu looked at her in surprise. He did not expect that she would care so much about Jia Baoyu's reputation. It seemed that the two of them had a good relationship before. Lu Shidao and the others did not expect this either. They did not know who Shui Baochai was. They only knew that she was from the mysterious Imperial City Department and was responsible for their safety. Seeing her come out to protect Jia Baoyu, the group of young masters did not know what to do. What is going on? Why would the Imperial Court protect Jia Baoyu? Lu Shidao and Lu Shisheng looked at each other and saw the doubt in each other's mind. The others did not know, but they knew how Jia Shidao died. At this moment, Hua Kuei smiled and said, Since young Master Shui said that, I want to see young Master Jia's zither skills even more. Seeing that Shui Baochai was about to say something, she said first, Today, I have invited all of you here for 2 reasons. One is to make friends through literature, and the other is to choose a good man to spend the rest of my life with. Now young Master Shui is fighting for young Master Jia. If young Master Shui wins the battle on behalf of young Master Jia, will it be young Master Shui's or young Master Jia's? I am a woman from brothel, so of course I am cheap. But if I make the 2 young masters fall out with each other, it will not be beautiful. Come, Miao Shu Wu. Chapter 2092. Shui Baochai thought that it would be awkward if she was chosen by this courtesan. But if she didn't help, would she let Baoyu and her brother lose face? Just as she was hesitating, the others began to echo Hua Yin. After all, what she said was reasonable, and everyone wanted to see Jia Baoyu make a fool of himself. So they began to shout, Song Qing-shu gently patted Shui Baochai's hand, indicating that he would handle the situation. Shui Baochai blushed. She thought that Baoyu was used to fooling around with the servant girls and always lacked the guard between men and women. How could she touch my hand so casually? But now that she was dressed as a man and had skin-to-skin contact with him, she didn't have to worry about being seen by others. Song Qing-shu cleared his throat and slowly said, "As the saying goes, skills should not be taught easily. I am not a performer, so why should I perform in front of everyone?" As soon as he finished speaking, the room was instantly filled with boos. You don't know how? If you really know, why don't you show a few moves? Yes, let everyone broaden their horizons. Playing the zither has always been an elegant thing. Brother Jia does not have to mind. These people were all talking at once, but Song Qing-shu was indifferent. He only looked at the courtesan and said, "I can play, but there must be some stakes." "What stakes?" Hua Yin asked with a smile. Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. "If you think my playing is pleasing to the ears, how about choosing me as your guest tonight?" He wanted to see what this woman was planning, so he decided to end this farce as soon as possible. As soon as he said this, everyone was in an uproar. Shui Baochai glared at him hatefully. The yellow-robed woman's eyes were full of disdain, and the others all spoke up to stop him. "Young master, you are making things difficult for me." Hua Yin had an awkward expression. "There are so many young masters here. How can I favor one and discriminate against another? I also know how to play the zither. It is not so easy to win a beauty just by playing one song. Brother Jia's request is too rash. How can a fairy like Master Hua be used as a stake?" Seeing the excitement of the crowd, Hua Yin raised the corner of her mouth slightly. She gestured for everyone to calm down and then said, "Young Master Jia, it is indeed inconvenient for me to be the wager today, but it is indeed not suitable for you to return empty-handed. How about this? If you are good at the zither, I will give you this painting." The servant girl at the side had already taken out a painting scroll and spread it out in front of everyone. The painting was filled with a myriad of mountains and valleys, rivers crisscrossing each other, and a vast expanse of mist. It was an extremely majestic and magnificent sight. In the mountains, there were rocks and springs, tile-roofed houses and thatched cottages, pine trees and tall bamboos, green willows and red flowers. Mountains and streams, rivers and lakes, fishing villages, wild fairies, waterside pavilions, and long bridges were all there, and it was a feast for the eyes. The thousand-li river and mountains painting. Shui Baochai stood up in excitement. Song Qing-shu was also a bit surprised. He did not expect to come across a masterpiece here. The painter of this painting was not famous. His name was Wang Shimeng, and not many people in later generations had heard of his name. However, this painting was extremely famous. It was publicly recognized as one of the 10 most famous paintings in China. This painting was painted by Wang Shimeng when he was 18 years old. Not long after, Wang Shimeng died. This painting became a masterpiece, and Emperor Huizong bestowed this painting to Kai Jing. During the Jingkong disaster, Bianjing was invaded by the Jin, and the painting went missing. No one expected it to fall into the hands of a courtesan. People of this era really put in a lot of effort to woo girls. Song Qing-shu sighed inwardly. He did not need to ask to guess how a prostitute like her had obtained this painting. Everyone present was full of praise, but their expressions were relatively calm. It was as if they were just admiring a rare painting, and not a masterpiece that had been passed down through the ages. Song Qing-shu was startled, but he quickly reacted. This painting had not been made for a long time, and it was painted by an unknown painter of this era. It was the same no matter what era it was. They did not expect that this painting would become one of the 10 most famous paintings after 1,000 years, so they were not as shocked as he was when they saw it. "Do you like this painting?" Song Qing-shu noticed the excited Shui Baochai next to him. "Yes." Shui Baochai nodded instinctively. "I have seen a copy of this painting once. I have admired Wang Shimeng, who died young, for a long time. It has always been a pity that I did not see the original painting. Since you like it, I will win it and give it to you." Song Qing-shu was originally interested in this painting, and attacking Shue Baochai and dividing the aristocratic families was one of his plans. Shue Baochai was shocked and said hurriedly, "Bao Yu, don't be ridiculous." Although she had not seen Jia Yu too many times since she grew up, she was still very clear about her capabilities. "I know what I'm doing." After saying that, Song Qingshu stood up and said to Hua Yiyan, "I happen to like this painting very much. I will let you broaden your horizons." The group of people secretly curled their lips. Hua Yiyan could not help but say, let me say this first. If young master's zither skills cannot convince everyone, then I will not give this to young master." "Of course," Song Qingshu said lightly. Shue Baochai frowned. Even if she went on stage, it would not be easy to convince everyone. After all, he could deliberately lie and refuse to admit it. She could not do anything about it. The yellow-robed woman was also looking at him with interest. She did not know where his confidence came from. Was he an arrogant person, or did he really have the ability? Song Qingshu sat cross-legged in front of the zither. Seeing his solemn expression, the group of people could not help but quiet down. Originally, he did not know anything about music at all. After coming to this world, Dongfang Muxue took him in. Later, he was taught by zither masters like Zhao Min and Rin Yingying for a long time. He also had Shun Bijuan, a lady who was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, as his training partner. Although his zither skills could not be said to be the top master, it was not a big problem for him to beat a top courtesan in a remote town. However, when it came to zither skills, everyone's judgment was very subjective. It was not so easy to convince everyone. The reason why he was confident was that he was inspired by what the top courtesan had done just now, infusing the sound of the zither with his internal strength. Hua Yiyan had done that just now without anyone noticing. His martial arts skills were far better than hers, so it was easier for him to do it silently. Unless there was a great master of the same level present, no one would notice what he had done. Having made up his mind, Song Qingshu's hands immediately turned into afterimages, and an extremely passionate and demonic melody rang out. The expressions of everyone present immediately changed, and their bodies began to tremble, as if they were unable to restrain the excitement in their bodies and were about to dance with the music. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. With the Divine Square dance song, the hottest ethnic style, coupled with his own internal strength, they could not dance even if they wanted to. Originally, it was difficult to use the zither to compose some of the tunes of the hottest ethnic style, but with the help of internal strength, it did not have much of an impact. The group of young masters all turned red from holding back. Decadent music, decadent music. What a disgrace, what a disgrace. Even so, they could not resist the instinctive reaction of their bodies. One by one, they began to shake along with the music. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. "You say no, but your body is quite honest." Chapter 2093. The three sounds of the zither, scattered sound, overtone sound, and press sound, were all very quiet. The scattered sound was deep and distant, making people think of the ancient times. The overtone sound was like the sound of nature, with a sense of coldness and immortality. The press sound was very rich, with lingering rhyme under the fingers, subtle and long, sometimes like the human language, sometimes like the mood of the human heart, ethereal and changeable. In a word, the biggest feature of the zither was silence. First, the sound of the zither was quiet and distant. Second, the environment of playing the zither was quiet, and the heart of the player should be quiet. The ancients praised that magnanimity has no corners, and great tools cannot be made. Great sound is silent, and the elephant is invisible. The sound of the zither was low, slow, distant, and ethereal. It allowed one to enter a state of soundless music that surpassed sound by playing and listening to the zither. It allowed one to experience the realm of hope sound and extreme silence. Later generations rarely appreciated the charm of the zither. When ordinary people touched the zither for the first time, they would mistakenly think that all the zither songs sounded the same. Because the melody and rhythm of the zither were complex and special, it was difficult for the brain to remember. Therefore, people often needed to learn to play the zither before they could gradually master the rhythm of the zither. This was the principle of playing 1,000 songs before understanding the sound. The hottest ethnic style was the opposite. The reason why these catchy divine songs were brainwashing was that their melody was simple and the rhythm was obvious, and it was easy to remember. The popularity of the later generations all over the world was proof. Then, with the help of Song Qingshu's powerful internal force, people in this era could not control their body's instinctive reaction, although it was difficult for them to accept this style of music. However, these people were all self-respecting people, and no one wanted to make a fool of themselves by dancing in public, so they tried their best to be patient. But the more they endured, the more sensitive their bodies became. Listening to the music, they felt as if an electric current was pouring into their heads, making them numb and tremble. After the song ended, Song Qingshu returned to his seat and leisurely enjoyed his tea. He was not a fool, and he would not play such a song in some solemn and formal occasions. But in this house of red sleeves, who was a real gentleman? How could they appreciate the essence of the zither? This kind of song was more down to earth and could touch their hearts. After a long while, the others slowly came back to their senses. The yellow-robed woman was the strongest and had the best concentration. She was also the first to recover. She looked at Song Qingshu, and her expression instantly changed. She couldn't help but take the initiative to ask, "How did you do it?" Song Qingshu shrugged. "I told you my zither skills were superb, but none of you believed me." Shui Baochai had also recovered from shock. Hearing his words, she couldn't help but say, "You really weren't good at playing before." During this period of contact, Song Qingshu already knew that she did not spend much time with Jia Baoyu over the past few years. Therefore, he directly replied, "A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. Sister Bao should understand this principle. Look at how proud you are." Shui Baochai pursed her lips into a smile. "But your style, it's still not elegant enough." "Yes, this is what the ancients called decadent music. It's simply unbearable to look at." At this time, the others gradually came back to their senses. A young master couldn't help but agree. Shui Pan and Song Qingshu were naturally on the same side. Seeing this, he immediately retorted, "Tui, you were the one who played the most happily just now. Doesn't that mean you like this kind of music?" I, Master Hua, I'm not." That person's face instantly turned red, and he hurriedly explained to Hua Kuei. At this time, Hua Yuyin couldn't help but laugh. "I think this tune is quite interesting. Although it goes against the ancient method, it's original and goes straight to the heart. That feeling just now was too wonderful." This group of people had already felt somewhat ashamed of their reactions just now. Now that they heard the main character say this, they all sighed in relief. They no longer braced themselves to find fault and all agreed. Hua Yin took the painting and walked to Song Qingshu's side. "Yin will keep my promise and give this painting to you, young master." Her smile quickly froze because the other party nodded and took the painting. He casually passed it to Shui Baochai. "It's for you." Shui Baochai was pleasantly surprised and nervous. "For me? Didn't I say that I came out to play the zither for you?" Song Qingshu looked at her and replied. Shui Baochai's little face instantly turned red. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at anyone else. She replied in a small voice, "Thank you." At the side, Shui Pan felt a little upset. He thought to himself, "Baoyu is really a bastard. I treat him like a brother, but he's flirting with my sister? But this is also good. He doesn't want to fight with me for Master Hua. Sister, you can sacrifice a little and stall him for a while." If Shui Baochai knew what he was thinking, she would probably grab the teapot beside her and smash it on his head. Hua Yin was also a little angry at being ignored, but it wasn't convenient for her to lose her temper. She directly returned to her seat. Young Master Jia can see that everyone here is skilled in both the pen and the sword. This makes things difficult for Yu Yin. What is troubling Master Hua? Tell us so that we can discuss it. Perhaps we can help you. The group of people all became spirited. Hua Yin covered her mouth and laughed. I'm just vexed. All the young masters are talented, but I'm alone. I can't split myself into two. But no matter who I choose, I'll hurt the reputation of the others. It's really difficult. Everyone knew that the truth had come. They all smiled and said, Master Hua, you worry too much. Just choose. We are not petty people. Song Qing curled his lips. He thought to himself, these people are only pretending to be generous now to leave a good impression. When they find out that they have not been chosen, their expressions will probably not be so good. Only then did Hua Yuyin say, after thinking about it, I finally decided to leave the choice to heaven's will. Heaven's will? The group of people were confused. Hua Yuyin didn't explain. Soon, a maid brought out a stack of petals. She then said, I just ordered people to pick these petals. All the young masters can count how many petals there are before they fall to the ground. In the end, the young master closest to the correct number wins. Shui Baochai said in a low voice, This Hua Kuei is really scheming. Who can count so many petals in such a short time? Everyone can only guess. Everyone has the same chance. Everything will be decided by heaven's will. This way, no one can blame her. Song Qing smiled. In a place like this, who isn't a smooth and slick person? Shui Baochai couldn't help but look at him. It seems that you come to this kind of place often. Song Qingshu's smile froze. He wisely didn't respond to her. Since everyone has no objections, I will begin. Hua Yuyin smiled slightly. She held the plate and began to dance, causing a group of men to cheer loudly. Shui Baochai curled her lips and snorted in a very low voice. It's just scattering petals. You still need to dance. So pretentious. The yellow-robed woman on the side nodded in agreement. Song Qingshu laughed inwardly. It seemed that women just didn't like women. Hua Yuyin danced for a while. Suddenly, she pointed her wrist. Like a goddess scattering petals, a sky full of petals flew out from the plate. The group of people hurriedly opened their eyes wide to count. However, after counting a few petals, they became dizzy. How could they count all of them? Shui Pan was so anxious that he couldn't help but ask his sister. Shui Baochai shook her head slightly. She couldn't count either. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. With his cultivation, he could use his qi to sense. He didn't need to use his eyes to see. Soon, he confirmed the accurate number, 1,024 petals. Soon, everyone handed in their guesses. After Hua Yuyin checked, she said with a smile, It seems that young Master Shui's luck is the best. His answer is the closest to the actual number of petals. Chapter 2094. Song Qingshu frowned. How is this possible? With his cultivation, there was no way he could have made a mistake. He was certain that there were 1,024 petals. Shui Baochai looked at her brother in disbelief. You actually got it right? How many petals did you write? Of course, your brother is blessed by the heavens. He has the blessings of the gods. Shui Pan was extremely pleased with himself. I was just casually writing, and I think I wrote around 800. I didn't think I would actually get it right. Shui Baochai couldn't help but spit. Stop blaspheming the gods. Song Qingshu's heart was as clear as a mirror when he heard their conversation. He had initially suspected that he had been careless and missed out a few petals. However, Shui Pan's answer was only around 800. It was impossible for there to be such a huge difference. However, Hua Kuei had said that it was the correct answer. Song Qingshu quickly understood that Hua Kuei was manipulating things from behind the scenes. In fact, he only had the right to come here because Hua Kuei had tampered with the poem. He had originally thought that Hua Kuei was here for Jiao Baoyu, but it seemed that he was really here for Shui Pan. What was going on? Song Qingshu was even more puzzled. The other young masters didn't think too much about it. When they saw that Hua Kuei had chosen Shui Pan, they all looked as if they had lost their parents and tried to persuade her to reconsider. Some of them even mentioned his nickname, Local Bully. How could Shui Pan endure this kind of humiliation? He immediately jumped up and began a fight with that person. The rest of the people were originally unhappy that Shui Pan had the beauty in his arms. They all pretended to stop the fight, but in reality, they were holding onto Shui Pan's arms and legs. They made it so that he couldn't fight freely and could only take a beating from the beginning to the end. Shui Baochai naturally wanted to go over and help, but as a woman, she was somewhat resistant to physical contact with men. Furthermore, these were all young masters of the capital with extraordinary backgrounds. She didn't dare to be too heavy-handed in order to avoid making enemies for the Shui family. The yellow-clothed girl had her arms crossed in front of her chest, looking as if she was watching a show. Shui Baochai could only helplessly ask for help from Song Qingshu. Baoyu, come and help. Song Qingshu couldn't just stand by and watch, especially since Shui Pan had treated him pretty well along the way. He couldn't just watch him suffer. However, he was not interested in fighting with this group of rich playboys. He directly grabbed a teapot and threw it at the crowd. Bang! The teapot smashed onto the head of the person who was fighting with Shui Pan, and the tea splashed onto everyone else. Those people hurriedly let go of Shui Pan and hurriedly tidied up their clothes. Lu Sherdao shouted, "Jia Baoyu, are you crazy?" Hearing him call his name directly, Song Qingshu thought that the Liu family was really going to break off relations with the Jia family. He said, "I'd like to ask you why you're so crazy. We're all from the capital city, and we see each other all the time. Moreover, we have important tasks on our journey to the west. But now you're fighting over a girl from a brothel? Where would the face of the imperial court be? If today's matter were to spread to Lin, what do you think the consequences would be?" Everyone was dumbfounded by his rebuke. Someone suddenly thought, "Jia, you're usually a playboy. Why are you pretending to be a big-tailed wolf with such righteous words?" When they were about to refute, Shui Baochai had already pulled out the long sword from her waist. She said coldly, "The imperial court assigned me to be responsible for your safety. If anyone makes trouble, don't blame me for being rude." Seeing the shining long sword, these people realized that they were from the mysterious and cold-blooded Imperial City Department. They gradually calmed down. Seeing this, Huayun hurried to ease the atmosphere. She said, "It's all my fault. I made you fall out with each other. How about this? All of your expenses will be free today. My sisters will accompany you well." Hearing this, the faces of those childs became better. They all apologized to her and expressed their gratitude. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. Before these people came up, each of them had paid 500 taels of silver. How much could the rest of the wine cost? As for those girls accompanying them for free, these young masters were very prideful. How could they really let them do it for free? Who knew how many things they would be rewarded with as tips? Shui Baochai hurriedly said, "Don't arrange girls for me. I don't need them." "Oh." Huayin glanced at her with a faint smile. The other childs also looked at her strangely. Shui Baochai hurriedly explained, "I'm responsible for everyone's safety. I can't be distracted." Only then did the others feel relieved, and they all thanked her one after another. The yellow-robed girl also said coldly, "I don't need them either." Hearing this, the childs whispered to each other, "This gigolo doesn't like women. Could he be a rabbit?" But he didn't respond when we went to talk to him. "It's because he doesn't like you guys. He probably likes that Jia Baoyu." "You don't say. That guy's really beautiful. He's really born with a good appearance." "That makes sense. He doesn't talk to anyone except Jia Baoyu." Song Qingshu almost laughed out loud. With the ability of a yellow-robed girl, she could naturally hear these whispers. Her face was so cold that it was almost frozen. He couldn't help but add fuel to the fire. "I don't need girls to accompany me. Just arrange a room for me with them, so that the House of Red Sleeves won't have to spend money." As he said this, he pointed at the yellow-robed girl and Shui Baochai. The other childs looked at each other, as if they had expected this. "Get out." The yellow-robed girl was also very straightforward. She answered him with one word and rushed out of the door. Shui Baochai glared at him with a red face. "Baoyu, don't mess around." In the end, his wish was not fulfilled. Shui Baochai and he each had a room. As for the yellow-robed girl, she was nowhere to be seen. No one knew whether she had returned to the inn or gone somewhere else. The other childs all went back to their rooms with young and beautiful girls in their arms. Shui Pan was the happiest one. He followed Huayin back to her room, drooling all the way. Song Qingshu found an opportunity to say to Shui Baochai, I think you'd better go and see your brother in case something happens. Shue Baochai was shocked and couldn't help but ask, "You also think there's something wrong with the courtesan queen?" She knew her brother's character well. There were so many handsome girls, but he chose the most useless one. It would be strange if there was nothing wrong with him. Song Qing-shu rolled his eyes. "You can see it, but you still let your brother be alone with her?" Shue Baochai immediately showed a bashful expression. "What if we were just thinking too much? What if they do illicit things in the room? It would be inappropriate if I go and see them." Sister Bao, you're from the Imperial City Department. Haven't you seen this kind of thing before?" Song Qing-shu looked at her in surprise. Shue Baochai blushed. "No, you have to go with me." Song Qing-shu immediately shook his head. "I don't know martial arts. I'm clumsy. I'll be easily discovered if I go there." Shue Baochai grabbed his hand. "I'll take you there." Chapter 2095. Feeling the girl's soft and tender hands, Song Qing-shu suddenly felt that he was a bit unkind. After all, Shue Baochai thought he was Jia Baoyu. If they weren't childhood sweethearts and she was worried about her brother's safety, she definitely wouldn't have done such a thing. "Why are you acting like a weird uncle?" Song Qing-shu started to despise himself as she pulled him away. He had encountered many similar situations in the past when he impersonated someone else. Why did he become so pretentious now? Could it be that after being a whore for so long, he wanted to set up a chastity? As Song Qing-shu complained about himself, he had already been pulled to Hua Yuyin's room. Because she and Shue Pan had lingered outside for a while, the two of them had arrived first. After all, Shue Baochai came from the Imperial City Guards and had excellent professional skills. With Song Qing-shu accompanying her, she quickly regained her professionalism and took off her hairpin to open the window, leading Song Qing-shu inside. "Are we really going in? What if they do something inappropriate inside and we just watch from the side?" Song Qing-shu said with schadenfreude. Shue Baochai rolled her eyes at him. "I can't let my brother take the risk. If we're too far away, I'm worried that I won't be able to protect him in time." Song Qing-shu nodded inwardly. This girl was quite meticulous. Suddenly, footsteps came from outside the door. Shue Baochai grabbed Song Qing-shu and hid behind the screen. What if they come here later? The two of them were squeezed together in the narrow space. Song Qing-shu suddenly felt that today's weather was not bad. What if they come here later? The two of them were squeezed together in the narrow space. Song Qing-shu suddenly felt that today's weather was not bad. They won't. Shue Baochai's breath smelled like orchids. This is usually a place to change clothes. With their current situation, they won't come here. As expected, they first heard the two of them enter the room, followed by Hua Yiyin's mocking voice. "Young master, don't be impatient." Shue Pan chuckled. How can young master not be impatient when the young lady is so alluring? "I'm coming." Thump. He didn't even need to look to know that Hua Yuyin had most likely dodged, causing Shue Pan to bump into a table or chair. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. As expected of local bully, Shue Baochai was also rubbing her forehead in embarrassment. She was just as embarrassed. "Did you fall, young master?" "No, how could I fall?" Listening to the two of them chatting awkwardly, Song Qing-shu was bored to death. Even if there was something wrong with his top courtesan, it would not pique his interest. After experiencing all kinds of storms, it was really difficult for him to take this matter to heart. In his boredom, he began to admire Shue Baochai's side profile. Her skin was smooth and fair, and her contours were extremely soft. She was indeed an outstanding beauty. Shue Baochai happened to meet his gaze when she turned around. She couldn't help but blush and said lightly, "Why are you looking at me?" "Because you're good-looking." Song Qing-shu complimented naturally. "Baoyu, you're getting more and more glib." Although Shue Baochai was reprimanding him, there was a hint of amusement in her eyes. "I'm sure that's how you usually praise little sister Lin." Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. Little sister Lin has her own beauty, and so does big sister Baoyu. Plum, orchid, bamboo, chrysanthemum, each has its own advantages. Don't be serious. Seeing that the two of them were alone, he didn't want to say anything bad about little sister Lin. He felt both sad and gratified. If he was alone with Lin Daiyu, he probably wouldn't say anything bad about me. Little girl, stop messing with me. I really can't wait any longer, Shui Pan said as he began to take off his clothes. His eyes were filled with perverted lust. Seeing that she couldn't get any more information out of him, Hua Yuyin immediately stopped smiling. Coincidentally, he pounced on her and she couldn't help but snort coldly. You're courting death. With a casual palm strike, Shui Pan screamed in pain and collapsed to the ground. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Big brother. Although Shui Baochai had been paying attention to the situation, she turned her head away in embarrassment when she saw her brother's ugly expression. She didn't expect Hua Yuyin to turn hostile at this moment. Seeing Shui Pan lying lifeless on the ground, Shui Baochai was both shocked and angry. She drew her sword and attacked mercilessly. Hua Yuyin was also shocked. She hadn't expected there to be someone else in the room. Caught off guard, she was at a disadvantage. Song Qingshu didn't go out. Shui Pan was only knocked unconscious, but his life wasn't in danger. Shui Baochai's swordsmanship must have been taught by Shui Yi. Her moves were exquisite and profound, forcing her opponent to retreat. On the other hand, Hua Yuyin's martial arts seemed to be very different from those of the Central Plains. At the same time, it wasn't the style of the Western region. He had fought with the Persian three emissaries, Tajkis and Yin Liandan, so he knew a thing or two about the characteristics of the Western region's martial arts. Just as he was thinking, the situation suddenly changed. Hua Yin had taken advantage of the time, when she was near the head of the bed, to take out two specially shaped sabers, one long and one short. She switched from defense to offense. The room was instantly filled with dazzling saber light. The situation began to reverse. Woku. People in this world might not have seen that kind of saber, but how could Song Qingshu, who came from the future, not have seen it? He suddenly became spirited. After coming to this world, heroes rose together. He had traveled to many countries, but he hadn't had much contact with Japan. He didn't know what era Japan was in. Was it the Warring States period? Because this was a chaotic world, he wasn't sure if the Japan of this world would be the same as the Japan of the Jin and Song dynasties. Value, go out and inform the others. At this moment, Shui Baochai's voice came. Obviously, she was in danger because of her opponent's strange saber skills. She had to inform him to run first. There's someone else. Hua Yuyin's pupil shrank. She directly stabbed her saber behind the screen. Watch out! Shui Baochai was shocked and hurriedly attacked behind her, trying to besiege Wei to save Zhao Zhao. Song Qingshu secretly shook his head. It was obvious that Hua Yuyin deliberately exposed a flaw to lure her alone. According to a normal fight, although Shui Baochai was at a disadvantage, her opponent wouldn't win so quickly. It was hard to guarantee that the movement wouldn't alarm others. As expected, Hua Yuyin suddenly retreated and directly went into Shui Baochai's arms. The short saber in her hand directly stabbed Shui Baochai's heart. Shui Baochai's beautiful face turned pale. At the critical moment, she blocked with the hilt of her sword, but her whole body was wide open. Hua Yuyin's wrist moved quickly and instantly sealed all the vital acupoints on Shui Baochai's body. At this time, Song Qingshu quietly withdrew his hand because he saw that Shui Baochai's life was not in danger for the time being. It turns out that you are a woman. I was wondering why you were so beautiful. Hua Yuyin reached out and touched Shui Baochai's chest, smiling extremely proudly. Shameless, despicable, nasty. Shui Baochai's sensitive part had never been touched by others. Her pink face turned red with anger. Thank you for your compliment. Hua Yuyin giggled. How can a place like the House of Red Sleeves have a well-educated and reasonable lady? Who the hell are you? If Shui Baochai really believed that she was a courtesan from a brothel, it would be ridiculous. Chapter 2096. I am the Wind Maiden of the Shui sect, Hua Yuyin declared proudly. Her tone was full of reverence when she mentioned the Shui sect. It was obvious that she was very proud of her identity. Shui sect? Shui Baochai's eyes flashed with confusion. You're from Dongying? If it were anyone else from the Southern Song dynasty, they probably wouldn't have heard of the Shui sect. However, she was part of the Imperial City Department and was in charge of intelligence in the Southern Song dynasty. Naturally, she had heard of the top masters around Temujin. Why are people of the Shui sect here? A voice suddenly came from behind her. The Wind Maiden turned around. When she saw that it was Jia Baoyu, she let out a sigh of relief. She also felt a little strange. She had clearly seen him here, but why did she keep forgetting that there was someone else here? Song Qing-shu, on the other hand, was in a very bad mood. This was not the first time he had heard of the Shui sect. Last time in Xiangyang, Huang Rong had been kidnapped by a subordinate, Guard Lin, and he had even drugged her with that despicable thing. To a certain extent, he had to thank him for drugging her. But that was not the main point. The main point was that Guard Lin had been too despicable. Now that the Wind Maiden had also come to play these kinds of tricks, were all the disciples of the Shui sect like this? Seeing that it was Jia Baoyu, the Wind Maiden was relieved. According to the intelligence she had received, he did not know any martial arts. Furthermore, when they had been in close contact, she had not sensed any internal energy fluctuations from him. Our master has invited all of you to the north as guests, so he has sent me to welcome you. The Wind Maiden replied with a smile. Now that the situation had been decided, she did not mind enjoying the leisure of a victor. Song Qingshu frowned, then understood. So it was Su Liawu who lacked confidence and sent his subordinates to get rid of the other competitors first. The Wind Maiden had a look of fear on her face. Of course not, she said hurriedly. The prince is a genius, wise and mighty. How could you good-for-nothings be a match for him? Song Qingshu could not help but wonder at her attitude. From your tone, it seems that you are quite afraid of him. The Wind Lady's expression changed, and she said solemnly, The prince is invincible, and we, as his subordinates, are sincerely convinced. Naturally, our tone will be more respectful. Song Qingshu nodded. I understand. Su Liwu's pride wouldn't stoop so low as to do such a thing. The Water Moon Great Sect must have made the decision on their own and sent you to deal with the other candidates, doing Su Liwu a favor. The Wind Maiden was infuriated by the fact that he wasn't afraid in the slightest. Why do you have so many questions? You have to understand your situation. You're my prisoner. Shui Baochai couldn't help but look at him worriedly, afraid that he would anger the Wind Maiden. Song Qingshu smiled. Just now, you clearly said that you would invite us as guests. Have you revealed your true colors now? You talk too much. The Wind Lady's expression was dark as she approached Seiji with a knife. It's better to tie him up. Song Qingshu shook his head. I'm so calm. Don't you wonder where my confidence comes from? Where? The Wind Maiden tightened her grip on the knife in her hand. She had wanted to ask this question for a long time. Song Qingshu suddenly let out a long sigh. If you don't come out, I'm going to be killed by this angry woman. As soon as he finished speaking, the window of the room was suddenly smashed open. A figure rushed in, but what was even faster than the figure was the flash of a sword that glowed with a cold light. The sword danced, and with a whoosh, 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 it stabbed out 3 times in an instant. These 3 stabs were not only fast and hurried, but all of them were aimed at the Wind Maiden's vitals. His swordsmanship might not be at the peak, but there were very few people in the martial world who could compare to him in terms of viciousness and cruelty. His eyes also flashed with a cruel, beast-like green light. It was as if his greatest hobby in life was to kill, and his only purpose in life was to kill. The way he swung his sword was also very strange. Everything above his elbow didn't seem to move, and he only used the strength of his wrist to stab out. He was never willing to expend any energy when it wasn't necessary. The Wind Maiden cried out in surprise. She held a long and a short sword in her hands and protected herself impenetrably. Song Qingshu secretly nodded as he watched. The Water Moon sect was indeed the #1 expert in Japan. Even their disciples' swordsmanship was so impressive. However, she had lost the initiative, and the Central Plains Red Sword was too fast and too ruthless. She dodged 7 consecutive strikes, but she couldn't dodge the 8th. Blood blossomed on her chest, and the wind maiden screamed in pain. She raised her wrist, and several cold sparks shot towards Song Qing-shu. The Central Plains Red frowned. It was obvious that she had been struggling internally. Only then did she turn around and block in front of Song Qing-shu with her sword, blocking the cold sparks. The Wind Maiden took this opportunity to throw a smoke bomb. While the room was filled with smoke and the Central Plains Red's vision was blocked, she quietly escaped. Song Qing-shu could naturally make her stay, but he didn't do anything. There was no need to expose himself. After the smoke in the room dissipated, the Central Plains Red stared at the hidden weapons on the sword and sighed regretfully. Saving people isn't as interesting as killing people. Song Qing-shu knew what the Central Plains Red was implying. If it wasn't to save him, the Central Plains Red wouldn't have given the Wind Maiden a chance to escape. He couldn't help but smile and say, "You're willing to kill such a charming little beauty?" The Central Plains Red licked his lips, and a hint of excitement appeared in his eyes. She's an expert. It's more enjoyable to kill experts. Song Qing-shu was speechless. This person was really a monster. It's just that her master is the Water Moon sect. You can't defeat her. The Central Plains Red frowned. I heard that the Water Moon sect is the #1 expert in Japan. Their Water Moon saber technique is unpredictable. I'm a little curious. Is his saber faster or my sword faster? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be surprised. You know about the Water Moon sect? And you know his martial arts so well? The Central Plains Red said proudly, "As an assassin, I naturally have to investigate the famous experts in the world in advance, in case I encounter a target one day and have no idea where to start." Oh, Song Qing-shu's curiosity was suddenly piqued. No matter which expert it is, will you accept them? The Central Plains Red's eyes shone brightly. The higher the martial arts, the more interested I am. Song Qing-shu was even more curious. If there's a mission for you to assassinate Song Qing-shu, how do you plan to do it? The Central Plains Red held his breath for a moment. After a long time, he said in a muffled voice, "I won't accept the mission to assassinate him." "Why?" Shui Baochai couldn't help but ask. The Central Plains Red replied, "I can't defeat him." Huh? Shui Baochai didn't expect such an honest answer. Her attitude hurt the Central Plains Red's pride a little, and he couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. If Song Qing-shu was so easy to kill, those big shots wouldn't be so troubled. I'm an assassin, not a fool. Why would I accept a mission that I know is suicide? After saying that, his figure flashed and disappeared out of the window. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. He laughed very happily. Chapter 2097. Hey, Shui Baochai couldn't help feeling anxious when she saw Dian Hong run away. What's wrong? Are you close to him? Song Qing-shu had always been suspicious of the relationship between Dian Hong and the Shui family. After all, in Chu Liuxiang, Dian Hong was raised by Shui Shaoran. No, my acupoints haven't been unsealed yet. Shui Baochai had just had her major acupoints sealed by Feng Nu, so she couldn't move at all. Forget it. You can't catch up to him anyway, Shui Baochai said in distress. Go find young Master Yang and see if he's here. Young Master Yang? Song Qing-shu was stunned for a long time before he realized that she was talking about the yellow-robed woman. Find him to unseal your acupoints. Shui Baochai nodded hurriedly, but the other party said, I'm not looking for him. Why not? Shui Baochai blinked. Her eyes filled with confusion. First of all, he was angered by those people just now, so he's probably gone long ago. You won't be able to find him even if you want to, Song Qing-shu continued. Also, that Feng Nu seemed to have sealed the acupoints on your chest. If you find a man to unseal your acupoints, wouldn't that be letting him off easy? What nonsense are you talking about? Shui Baochai's little face turned red. That young Master Yang isn't what you think. Oh, Song Qing-shu stared at her with a smile, waiting for her to continue. Shui Baochai hesitated for a moment, but finally said, Actually, she's a woman dressed as a man. No wonder she has red lips, white teeth, and tender skin. If she's a man, She's too effeminate. Song Qing-shu had a look of sudden realization. Xue Baochai was speechless, thinking, aren't you also red lips, white teeth, and tender skin? Where did you get the courage to talk about others? Song Qing-shu continued, how about I unseal your acupoints? He was bored on the road anyway, so he had to find something to do to pass the time. He couldn't help but flirt whenever he saw a beautiful girl. If Song Qing-shu had appeared with his original identity, he would not have let himself loose like this. After all, he was in a relationship and did not want to easily provoke other girls. But now that he appeared with the identity of Jia Baoyu, he didn't have many concerns. Moreover, he used Jia Baoyu to wander between several women and divide the relationship between the four big families. Although it was a bit damaging, it could be regarded as an effective method. Now he lacked time the most, and the four big families were dragging him down, so he had to try all kinds of methods. You know how to unseal acupoints? Xue Baochai was shocked. I don't know. Song Qing-shu shook his head naturally. But I've heard the guards in the Fu mention that unsealing acupoints is to activate the body's qi and blood. I'll rub a bit for you, and you should be able to unseal your acupoints. Rub. Xue Baochai almost fainted from anger. The acupoint on her chest was poked. How does she rub that place? Don't come over. Xue Baochai turned pale with fright when she saw that the other party had really rolled up his sleeves. I was rash. It doesn't seem to be very convenient. Song Qing-shu laughed foolishly, as if he suddenly realized something was wrong. Sister Bao, don't blame me. Xue Baochai bit her lower lip and glared at him fiercely. I really don't know if you're really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. I've never seen you act so willfully before. People always change. Song Qing-shu instilled similar ideas in her little by little. After getting used to it, even if he really didn't act like Jia Baoyu in the future, she would probably get used to it. Then I'll stay here to protect you. I heard that the acupoints will automatically unseal after a few hours. Xue Baochai frowned slightly. No, I don't know how many accomplices the Wind Lady has, and I don't know how those young masters are doing. If something happens to them, it'll be troublesome. Help me unseal my acupoints. This time it was Song Qing-shu's turn to be surprised. He was just saying it for fun. Was she really going to do it? Xue Baochai rolled her eyes at him impatiently. Of course you're going to use a stick or something to poke my acupoints. What are you thinking? Song Qing-shu smiled awkwardly. It was no wonder that he would have such a perverted thought. After looking around the room for a while, he finally found a suitable stick. This should be fine, right? Yes, Xue Baochai said with a red face. Press my Tianshu, Guanyuan, and Debao acupoints one by one. Song Qing-shu knew where these acupoints were, but Jia Baoyu didn't. Seeing that he was stunned, Xue Baochai obviously thought of the same thing. She whispered, 3 inches above the navel, to the right here. A little higher. Almost there. A little to the right. Just like that, while Xue Baochai pointed, Song Qing-shu fumbled and finally unsealed the acupoints on her body. In the end, Song Qing-shu still cared about his reputation. He didn't want to take advantage of her. The room quickly fell into silence. It seemed to be filled with a charming atmosphere. Xue Baochai's face was dark red. She whispered, I'll go check on those people first. Then she trotted out of the room. Looking at her fleeing figure, Song Qing-shu smiled and shook his head. He also followed her out. The other young masters were knocked unconscious and put under house arrest. Just now, when the Central Plains Red rushed in, the people of the Imperial City Department had already noticed that something was wrong. Even the yellow-robed woman heard the news and rushed over. Fortunately, the Mongolians only wanted to invite them to Mongolia as guests and didn't want to kill them. Otherwise, these people wouldn't even know how they died. Knowing that Hua Kuei was a Mongolian spy, they all rejoiced. Some even secretly said, lust is like a knife. The ancients didn't deceive me. Most of the people were cursing the shamelessness of the Mongolians. Only the Liu brothers looked at each other and saw the regret in each other's eyes. If they had known that the top courtesan was from the Mongolian side, they would have tried to get in touch with her. Maybe they would have succeeded by now. After Xue Pan woke up, he was in a daze. Obviously, he couldn't accept this result. The little beauty who liked him so much at ulterior motives. Because of this incident, the people of the Imperial City Department became more cautious. Even a yellow-robed woman didn't leave the group at will. Just like this, they headed west. There were no more accidents along the way. As they got closer to the spiritual state, they met more martial artists on the road. Although the territory of Xixiao was smaller than that of the Mongolian, Jin, Qing, and Song dynasties, it was founded on martial arts and had dominated the northwest for decades. Now, it was even stronger than the struggling Liao. Anyone who wanted to touch the western region would have to face Xixiao. Therefore, when the other countries heard that the Xixiao princess was looking for a husband, they all carefully selected the sons of nobles to participate in the contest. They wanted to take this opportunity to form an alliance with Xixiao. As for the people of the martial arts world, they were even more direct. They thought that if they could marry the Xixiao princess, they would have wealth and glory at their fingertips. How could there be anything better in this world? However, most of the famous figures in the martial arts world were married and had children. The new youngsters didn't have high martial arts skills. Therefore, many old heroes brought their sons and nephews to try their luck. Many bandits and gang members were alone. They couldn't help but hope that they could get lucky and set off for the spiritual state. Many people thought, maybe I'm destined to marry the Xixiao princess, and it doesn't mean that my martial arts skills are better than others. As long as I'm fated with the princess and she takes a fancy to me, I'll have the hope of becoming the prince's son-in-law. Along the way, they saw that the young heroes were all dressed in bright clothes. Even their weapons and tools were very exquisite. It was as if they were in a big competition. As the saying went, the poor study and the rich learn martial arts. Most of the families who learned martial arts had money. If they didn't behave well, it would be easier for them to get money. Therefore, most of the young men of the martial arts world who went to Xixiao wore gorgeous clothes in order to win the princess's favor. When acquaintances met each other, they would tease each other and ask about the princess's appearance and martial arts skills. If they didn't know each other, they would glare at each other and treat each other as enemies. Every time Song Qingshu heard these discussions, he couldn't help but feel proud. He felt a sense of achievement when he thought that the goddess of so many men's dreams used to be in his arms. One day, as they were walking slowly, a horse suddenly came towards them. The rider's right arm was hanging from his neck with a piece of white cloth. His clothes were torn, and he was in a very sorry state. The Southern Song people didn't think much of it. They thought that if this person didn't fall, then he must have been injured. That was normal. Unexpectedly, not long after, 3 more horses came. The riders were also seriously injured. If they didn't have broken arms, then they had broken legs. They saw that these 3 people's faces were ashen. They were very ashamed. They lowered their heads and hurried past, not daring to look at them again. Shui Pan couldn't help but ask, "Is there a fight ahead? Why are there so many people injured?" He was a young man and had already forgotten about the courtesan queen incident after so many days. Before he finished speaking, 2 more people came towards them. These 2 people were not riding horses. Their faces were covered in blood. One of them had a piece of green cloth wrapped around his head, and blood was constantly seeping out. Shui Pan shouted, "Hey, do you want medicine? Why are you injured?" The man glared at him fiercely, spat on the ground, and turned around to leave. Shui Pan was furious. He pulled out his whip and was about to lash at him. Shui Baochai stopped him. "Forget it. This person is seriously injured. There's no need to lower yourself to his level." At this moment, 4 horses came galloping towards them. The riders on the horses shouted at each other, "It's all your fault. You want to eat swan meat. Don't you think about how strong you are? You want to go to spirit state and become the emperor's son-in-law." Another person scolded, "If you have the ability, why didn't you pass the test? Now that you lost, you want to vent your anger on me." The other person scolded, "If you didn't stab me in the back, how could I have lost?" The 4 people were galloping and talking so fast that no one could hear what they were arguing about. In the blink of an eye, they were right in front of them. Seeing that there were many people in the Southern Song group, the 4 people didn't dare to fight with them. They pulled their horses and galloped to the side, but they were still pointing and cursing at each other. It seemed that the 4 of them wanted to go to spirit state and become the emperor's son-in-law. However, There seemed to be a test that none of them could pass. Since they were holding each other back, they had to return in defeat. At this moment, a few more people walked towards them on foot. They were all injured as well. Some were bleeding from their heads, and some were limping. Shui Pan couldn't suppress his curiosity. He rode forward and asked, "Hey, is the person at the front very strong?" A middle-aged man said, "Humph. You'll know when you try it yourself." Shui Pan and the others were all young and arrogant people. Not only were they not afraid, but they were even more excited. They excitedly urged their horses to gallop in that direction. After running for 7 or 8 li, they saw that the mountain path was steep. The path was only wide enough for one person to ride on, and after a few turns, they saw a group of people gathered in a group. Song Qingshu looked in the distance and saw 2 big men standing side by side in the middle of the mountain path. They were both over 6 feet tall and unusually tall. One of them was holding a large iron rod, while the other held a copper hammer in each hand. They were glaring fiercely at the people in front of them. There were at least 17 or 18 people gathered in front of the 2 men. "Excuse us, we're going to Spirit State. Please make way. Are you here to collect money for the road? Is it 1 tael of silver each or 2 taels of silver each? As long as you name a price, it's negotiable. If you don't get out of the way and annoy me, I'll chop your 2 big men into meat paste. Then, I won't be able to put them back together again. You'd better get out of the way obediently, lest disaster strikes. You 2 are handsome and majestic. Why don't you go to Spirit State and become the Emperor's son-in-law? Wouldn't it be a pity if that beautiful princess was taken away by someone else?" The crowd opened and closed their mouths, but the 2 men ignored them. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouted, "Get out of the way!" A cold light flashed, and a sword was thrust at the man on the left. The man was huge and his weapon was heavy, but his movements were fast. He hit the 2 hammers and sandwiched the sword between them. The pair of octagonal copper hammers weighed about 40 pounds each. With a clang, the sword was broken into more than 10 pieces. The burly man's leg flew out and kicked the man's lower abdomen. The man screamed and fell 7 or 8 feet away. He couldn't get up for a while. Another man dashed forward with a pair of sabers in his hands. The sabers formed a white light that protected his body. When he was in front of the 2 men, the man shouted and suddenly changed his saber technique. He landed on the ground and rolled forward, slashing at the 2 men's legs with his sabers. The man with the rod didn't even look at where the saber came from. He raised his iron rod and fiercely struck the white light. He heard a blood-curdling scream as the man's sabers were broken by the iron rods. The sabers pierced his chest as he rolled down the mountain. The 2 men injured 2 men, and the rest didn't dare to move forward anymore. Even Shui Pan and the others were shocked. They were no longer as excited as they were before. Song Qingshu shook his head slightly. He didn't know how many mobs had been attracted to the betrothal contest in the Western Xia. Although the martial arts of those 2 big men guarding the pass weren't weak, they couldn't be considered as real experts. Yet, they had managed to create a situation where 1 man could hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. "Get out of the way!" There was a commotion behind them. They could vaguely hear the Prince of the Jin Kingdom coming. The Prince of the Jin Kingdom? Out of curiosity, Song Qingshu turned his head and saw a group of Jin Kingdom cavalrymen escorting a young man. He was about 15 or 16 years old and wore a loose robe. He was thin but extremely handsome. Chapter 2098. The Jin cavalrymen were tall and burly, exuding a valiant aura. Although there were only a few dozen of them, they seemed to have the aura of an army of thousands when they stood together, causing the surrounding people to avoid them. The yellow-robed girl sighed and muttered to herself, "No wonder the imperial court and the Jin kingdom have lost so many battles." The Jin kingdom established their kingdom through martial arts. They are indeed not to be underestimated. Song Qingshu smiled. Judging from the attire of these cavalrymen, they were the elites he had selected to form a loyal army in recent years. Naturally, they were of higher quality than ordinary cavalrymen. Shui Pan was more carefree and quietly nudged Shui Baochai, "Sister, That pretty boy looks even fairer than you. Shui Baochai was speechless. He's a woman disguised as a man. How could you not see through this? A woman disguised as a man? Shui Pan's eyes lit up. If he's so handsome in men's clothing, how can he look like in women's clothing? But why does he look so familiar? Shui Baochai spat and said, "Do you always find beautiful things familiar?" Song Qing Shu secretly laughed, thinking that Shui Baochai had wronged her brother this time. Of course, Shui Pan found her familiar because he had seen her once in Lin, Anne's Luelu. At that time, Shui Pan saw her beauty and was tempted. He didn't know his own limits and tried to be a hero to save the beauty. In the end, he was kicked away by the Xiaming elders. This handsome young man was Wanyan Zhongjia. She had inherited her mother's beauty and had even surpassed her. In the past 2 years, she had become more and more beautiful. Even after disguising herself as a man, she was still enough to make people fall head over heels for her. I don't want the Xixiao princess either. This woman's body is so soft that it will be very comfortable to hug her. Shui Pan almost drooled. Shui Baochai hurriedly pulled his sleeve. Lower your voice. The Jin Kingdom is a country of tigers and wolves. They are not to be trifled with. She was responsible for the safety of this group of people and did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. Unfortunately, the Jin prince seemed to have heard Shui Pan's voice, and his expression immediately turned cold. Slap his mouth. The 2 cavalrymen at the front immediately whipped their whips at Shui Pan's face. Their movements were incomparably proficient, and the strength of their wrists was astonishing. Hearing the shrill sound of the whips tearing through the air, Shui Pan's teeth wouldn't be left if he was hit. Shui Pan was scared out of his wits and couldn't react at all. Fortunately, Shui Baochai was by his side and blocked the 2 whips with her sword. "Aren't you being a bit too ruthless?" Shui Baochai didn't look at the 2 horsemen. Instead, she stared at Wanyan Zhongjia. Wanyan Zhongjia coldly said, "Since he can't control his own mouth, don't blame others for controlling it for him. This is too unreasonable. It is indeed a barbarian country. You have delicate features, but unfortunately, your heart is as poisonous as a snake's." After the rebellion of Jinkong, the Jin and Song kingdoms were irreconcilable enemies. Over the past few years, they had been at war with each other. As a result, the anti-Jin sentiment in the country was very high. These young masters were used to being tyrannical in the country. How could they tolerate such a thing? Therefore, they all cursed out. Shui Baochai frowned. Now that things had come to this, there was nothing she could do to stop them. The yellow-robed girl's face was as cold as ice. Back then, the laundry had imprisoned many of her sisters and relatives. Naturally, she hated the Jin to the bone. Noisy, Wanyan Zhongjie revealed an impatient expression. His horsemen all drew their bows and aimed at the Southern Song Party. The soldiers of the Imperial City Department also took out their divine bow and faced them. Although the Jin were good at archery, they were no match for the Southern Song in archery. Wanyan Zhongjie frowned and felt some regret. He had been too careless. At such a close distance, they wouldn't be able to gain any advantage. Moreover, they would lose the mobility and momentum of cavalry. Just as the 2 sides were in a deadlock, an impassioned and austere sound of a zither rang out. Everyone was startled. Who was playing here? Shui Baochai was proficient in music. She knew that the zither had a sour and impassioned tone, but this sound was even more mournful than a normal zither. Every note seemed to be in sync with her heartbeat. As the zither rang out, her heart jumped. The faster the zither played, the faster her heartbeat became. She felt her chest pounding, extremely uncomfortable. After listening for a while, her heart felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. She suddenly realized, if he plays any faster, will my heart beat to death? Looking at the others, he saw that the soldiers of the Imperial City Department all had pained expressions on their faces. They could no longer hold the divine bow in their hands. As for the young masters, they were even worse off. Their faces were red as if they were about to bleed. The only thing they could do was cover their ears, but the sound continued to penetrate their minds. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He looked at an old man in white among the Jin troops. The only person who could play the zither like this was Ouyang Fo. It seemed that he really loved Wanyan Zhongjie as his granddaughter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have accompanied her from so far away. Suddenly, there was a shout. Everyone felt their hearts lighten. A figure had already attacked Ouyang Feng. Huh? Ouyang Feng did not dare to be careless when he saw his opponent's strange and swift movements. He quickly put down his iron zither, and in the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged several blows. When the zither stopped, the people of the Southern Song dynasty heaved a sigh of relief. They were drenched in sweat, as if they had just been fished out of a pool of hot water. I didn't expect this young girl to be so good at martial arts. Shui Pan gasped for breath. Looking at the two figures in the distance, he sighed to his sister. Shui Baochai's condition was much better. She replied, "Of course she is good at martial arts. That's why you didn't listen to me when I told you not to provoke her." I won't. Shui Pan hurriedly shook his head. That old man in white should be Western poison Ouyang Feng. I wonder if she'll be all right. Although Shui Baochai's martial arts were not top-notch, she was from the Imperial City Department. At the same time, she was meticulous and had excellent eyesight. She quickly recognized the identity of the enemy and could not help but worry. "Don't worry, she'll be fine." Song Qingshu comforted her. Although the yellow shirt girl's performance on Mount Wudong was a bit weak, it was only because she was facing grandmasters who fought to the death. It was difficult for her to intervene. But with her martial arts skills, she had easily intervened in the fight between Zhang Wuji and Shaolin Temple's Sandu during the lion slaughtering festival. She had swiftly won against Zhou Zhirua, who had suppressed all the heroes with her skills. Later on, she had even separated Zhang Sanfeng and the sweeping monk. Of course, both of them had already intended to stop fighting. Although the yellow shirt girl's combat experience was not as good as Ouyang Feng's, her strength was almost at the level of one of the five greats. Naturally, she could protect herself. After another dozen moves, Ouyang Feng suddenly jumped out of the battle. He waved his hand and said, "I don't want to fight anymore." "Why?" The yellow shirt girl knew that Ouyang Feng could not defeat her. Thinking of his reputation as the Western poison, she could not understand why he would hold back. "You are Song Qingshu's woman. I don't want him to come after me in the future." Ouyang Feng curled his lips. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the yellow shirt girl was disguised as a man. They had met on Mount Wudong, so after exchanging a few moves, he recognized her. "What nonsense are you talking about?" The yellow shirt girl's face turned red. "Brother Song's woman?" Wanyan Zhongjie looked her up and down. "You have a bit of a fox's charm." No wonder. The yellow shirt girl almost fainted from anger. "You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment." Wanyan Zhongjie suddenly changed the topic and pointed at Song Qingshu. "Hand over that jiagai to us, and we can consider letting you live." Chapter 2099. Song Qingshu was startled. He had never imagined that he would be involved in this conflict. The people from the Southern Song dynasty also looked at him suspiciously. Shui Baochai tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Did you offend her in the past?" Song Qingshu shook his head uncertainly. I don't think so." "How could not be?" Shui Pan slapped his forehead as if he had thought of something. "I was wondering why she looked so familiar. We met her in Luelu last time, and you even touched her chest." Shui Pan's voice was very loud. When the people around him heard this, they all had strange expressions. Wanyan Zhongjie's face turned red, and his eyes were filled with shame and anger. "You!" Shui Baochai spat. With this kind of grudge, it was no wonder that he was wanted. In this day and age, this kind of behavior was no different from that of a pervert. Not only did the others hate him, but even the yellow-robed woman glared at him with disgust. That was completely unintentional. It was just a coincidence. Song Qingshu didn't know who he was explaining this to. Shui Baochai could only step forward and say to Wanyan Zhongjie, "What happened before was just a misunderstanding. I hope you won't take it to heart. As for today's conflict, both of us are in the wrong. How about we both take a step back?" Even if it was anyone else in the group, she wouldn't let them take her away, let alone her relationship with Jiao Baoyu. Wanyan Zhongjie snorted. What if I don't? Before Shue Baochai could reply, the yellow-robed woman said, "Then we'll see." She hated the people of the Jin. If she hadn't been rational, she would have already attacked them. She couldn't wait for them to stir up trouble so that she would be able to explain herself when she returned home. Wanyan Zhongjie sat on his horse and looked down at her. "Don't think that just because you're Song Qingshu's woman that I won't dare to touch you. I have nothing to do with Song Qingshu." The yellow-robed woman's usually pale face now had a bit of a blush. It was unknown whether it was because of anger or shyness. However, she suddenly thought of something and a playful smile appeared on her face. "You care about it so much. Are you jealous?" "Why would I be jealous? I have nothing to do with him." Wanyan Zhongjie denied it, but there was a hint of happiness in his eyes. "Him? Which him?" "I didn't say who it was." The yellow-robed woman's emotions had already gradually calmed down. Seeing the two girls bicker, Shue Pan couldn't help but sigh. Song Qingshu is truly a role model for our generation. In the past, when I heard about his romantic affairs, I felt that they were exaggerated. I thought that there weren't that many beautiful women in the world, but I never thought that I would personally witness two of them fighting over him. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. The yellow-robed woman turned around and glared fiercely at him. Wanyan Zhongjie also raised his horsewhip, looking eager to give it a try. Shue Pan didn't deliberately suppress his voice, so the two of them were naturally able to hear him. Song Qingshu's mood was a little strange at this moment. People always said that one should scold a monk in front of a monk, but what was the current situation? Hearing others complimenting and envying him behind his back, this kind of feeling, why did it feel a little good? "That's enough. Stop messing around." Song Qingshu couldn't help but remind Wanyan Zhongjie using secret voice sending. Back in Linen, he had saved her using the identity of Jia Baoyu, so she must know his identity. Otherwise, she wouldn't have deliberately asked for him. As for Ouyang Feng, judging from his expression, he most likely knew as well. Wanyan Zhongjie pouted, but didn't react, as if he hadn't heard anything. Song Qingshu felt a headache coming on. This girl wouldn't really mess around, would she? Just as he was worried that she would get excited and cause a scuffle between the two sides, an angry shout suddenly rang out. "Who's causing trouble here?" Song Qingshu turned his head around and saw a group of Xixiao warriors rushing over. Surprisingly, the four villains were leading the group. "The king of our country sent us to greet our esteemed guests." Duan Yanqing glanced around and roughly guessed what was going on. However, he pretended that nothing had happened and cupped his hands towards the crowd with his Damascus iron staff. As the saying goes, one doesn't hit a smiling person. Since the host had come forward, the guests naturally couldn't really start a fight. "I've heard that your ventriloquism is unparalleled in the world. Seeing you today, it's indeed extraordinary," Ouyang Feng said with a smile. Duan Yanqing's expression was originally arrogant, but when he saw Ouyang Feng, he couldn't help but look surprised and fearful. "Mr. Ouyang?" Ouyang Feng laughed and said, "After leaving the western regions for so many years, it's rare that someone still remembers me." Duan Yanqing revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "Mr. Ouyang's name shakes the world. Who would forget you?" After some small talk, Duan Yanqing said, "Everyone, please wait for a moment. We need to take care of some matters first." Perhaps he was worried that everyone would feel cold and unhappy, so he went on to explain. "The princess is looking for a husband, so the emperor ordered the experts of the first-class hall to patrol around and not allow idle people to come and cause trouble. Who would have thought that the prince of the Tufan country would be so unreasonable? He actually sent people to guard the four main roads of the Xixia country and didn't allow other people to go to the Xixia country to recruit a husband. He only allowed this kid to go alone. We have killed more than 10 Tufan warriors along the way." While speaking, he looked at the two burly warriors guarding the mountain road with a murderous look on his face. Everyone on the scene suddenly realized that the guards were Tufan warriors. They were curious and followed them together. Seeing such a large group of people approaching, the Tufan warriors frowned, but they didn't show much fear. The terrain here was dangerous. It could be said that one man could hold the pass against 10,000 people. No matter how many people the other side had, they wouldn't be able to display their full strength. The leading man said, Prince Zongzan of the Tufan country has ordered that this pass will be closed for 10 days and will only be opened after the Mid-Autumn Festival in the 8th month. Before the Mid-Autumn Festival, women must pass men, monks must pass vulgar people, the old must pass young, and the dead must pass alive. This is called four must pass, four must pass. LV Sherdao sneered. What kind of reason is that? The big man said loudly. Reason. The old man's copper hammer and the second brother's iron rod are the reason. Prince Zongzan's words are the reason. You are a man, neither a monk nor an old man. If you want to pass, you must be a dead man. LV Sherdao was furious, but thinking that there were so many people here, he wasn't in a hurry to stand out. Duan Yanqing also snorted coldly. We are the people of the Xixia country's first-class hall. The king has ordered that no one is allowed to cause trouble during the princess's betrothal contest. If you leave quickly, we won't pursue this matter. The big man said proudly, Your king has an order. Our king also has an order. But your king's order doesn't affect us. You are courting death. The four great evildoers were not good-tempered people. Hearing the other side's words, Second Madam Yi raised her right hand, and several rhombus-shaped darts were shot toward the two big men. Slap! Slap! The darts pierced the clothes on the chests of the two men, but the two men did not seem to be injured at all. Shui Baochai was shocked. Could it be Shaolin's Vajra indestructible divine skill? But it's not easy to practice this divine skill. Song Qing Shu explained, It should be some leather armor on their bodies. I see. Shui Baochai nodded. Suddenly, she was stunned and looked at him with surprise. At this moment, the big man holding the rod shouted angrily, Stinky woman who used hidden weapons. He stretched out his big hand and tried to grab Second Madam Yi. Second Madam Yi's face darkened. She shot several darts directly toward the other side's head, face, and eyeballs. Unfortunately, the big man put the iron rod in front of his face and blocked all the hidden weapons. As for the other hidden weapons that hit their bodies, they were like stones sinking into the sea, not a bit damaged. The big man took the opportunity to sweep the iron rod in his hand. Second Madam Yi hurriedly raised her saber in front of her body. But she was knocked back as soon as they collided. Second Madam Yi was injured because of the opponent's divine strength and the advantage of the weapon. Humph! An iron rod came from the side. Duan Yanqing finally made his move. With a loud bang, the big man lost his grip on the iron rod and flew to the side of the grass. His mouth was also full of blood. Duan Yanqing's iron rod did not stop. It was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, piercing toward the big man's throat. The big man's blood and qi were in turmoil, so how could he force it away? Seeing that blood was about to splatter on the spot, suddenly a shout full of internal energy was heard. Who dares to hurt my Tufan warriors? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.